What character would realistically learn magic in Marvel? This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101, The End of the Kree. Hello, Earthling. Standing in the battleship, a holographic image appeared in front of Shenyan. A wrinkled, bearded Kree was smiling at him. Behind him stood a row of Kree soldiers, fully armed, with unknown guns in their hands that had already lit up a blue light at the muzzle, pointing at the back of the wizard. This should be the first time you see us, but we are not. Shenyan, your name is pronounced like this, right? Ha, it's almost as hard to pronounce as your friend named Tony Stark. He didn't seem to take the wizard seriously at all. This is understandable. After all, according to the plan of the Supreme Wisdom that has never made a mistake, the wizard in front of him has been weakened, and it is hard to say whether he can only be half as strong as he is. Thanks to Tony Stark's memory and Seth Beller's intelligence, they have sufficient intelligence sources on the Earth and a personality profile of Shenyan. In the countless calculations of the Supreme Wisdom, every reaction of his was calculated by the Kree. Whether it is silence or violent resistance, they have a plan to deal with it. According to the plan, the commander said, you have two choices. First, surrender. Second, resist and be captured by us. Of course, if you choose the second option, we will not only kill your friends, but also massacre half of the people on your planet. In order to prevent you from acting rashly without understanding the situation, I think it is better for me to prove the truth of my words. He waved his hand, and a soldier brought the confused Tony Stark to the screen. Shenyan clearly saw what he looked like now. The back half of Tony's head was cut open, revealing a bright red brain. Several tubes were inserted into it, and he opened his mouth wide, saliva dripping. If you think your friend's life is not enough to make you stop resisting, we also have a backup plan. Get ready to fire. He shouted loudly, and Shenyan heard someone on the other side of the screen quickly responding to his order. The other end of the screen showed the current appearance of the star battleship. It was cracked from the middle, and the black hole was shining with a fascinating red light. The commander continued, in order to make you realize the folly of resistance and our strength, I will aim at the planet next to the Earth and fire at it. The moon, is that what you call it? The red light began to condense. Stop. Shenyan said expressionlessly. Ah, you really will. The commander's smile froze on his face. He saw that the mage who was supposed to be on the D-78A3 team's spaceship suddenly disappeared. At the same time, a deafening explosion came from the interior of the star battleship. The driver quickly reported, the interior of the spaceship has been invaded. 30% damage. Boom. Another explosion came, and the driver's voice sounded like a scream. The red light lit up in the main control room, and the computer's warning sounded incessantly. The energy source of the Star Destroyer has disappeared. We have lost 45%. Commander. What? The commander's brain was in chaos. This situation was not in any step of the plan. You have lost 45%, Commander. Can't you hear it? The mage's voice sounded behind him. The commander turned his head suddenly, and he saw that the mage had appeared behind him at some point. His eyes were red, and he was chewing something in his mouth. Without his order, the Kree soldiers around him opened fire immediately. Their unique energy rifles could melt the alloy used to make spacecraft with one shot, but they had no effect on the mage. Before the red energy beams flew near the mage, they were caught by the black tentacles and then dragged to the mage's feet. A chewing sound that made people's teeth ache was heard. Shenyan smiled, and the alternating red light in the main control room hit his face, which looked particularly terrifying. The Kree soldiers who shot at him and the pilots in the main control room were twisted into a knot by an inexplicable force in an instant. With their limbs twisted, they flew to the ceiling of the main control room with uncontrollable screams. But this was just the beginning. Their heads were torn away from their bodies alive, with their spines attached. Screams continued in the splattering blood. What the commander couldn't understand was that they were still alive. Every one of them was like this. Their helmets also fell off by themselves. The commander couldn't describe their expressions. He saw with his own eyes that the eyeballs of two soldiers fell out. but they were still alive. Without hesitation, the commander pulled out his gun and pointed it at Tony Stark, who was standing next to him with his head exposed, and said sternly, "Stop what you are doing, otherwise, I will do it immediately." He screamed miserably, and the exquisite and advanced-looking pistol merged directly with his hand, and thousands of needles flew out from the grip of the pistol and pierced his body. "What will you do immediately? Come on, don't be afraid, tell me," he said softly, with a bigger and bigger smile on his face. The commander wanted to speak, but a needle went straight into his throat, becoming thicker and thicker in the process, piercing his body and coming out directly from his stomach. "Why don't you speak?" Shenyan waved his hand, and the commander flew over and floated beside him. He left the painful commander behind and waved to Tony. The man who was once one of the smartest people on Earth now looked like a demented idiot, and he didn't react at all to such a situation. His expression was dull, and the saliva in his mouth had already dripped into a pool on the ground. Shenyan's smile was so bright at this time, "It seems that they can't stand your mouth, Tony." He snapped his fingers. The tube inserted in the back of his head and the microbomb on his neck were quickly dispelled, and countless healing spells were thrown on Tony. His consciousness quickly recovered, and the first thing he saw after waking up was the black-robed wizard with red eyes. Is it you?" Tony swallowed and asked. "It's me." The wizard smiled. He didn't say a word. He opened a door and sent Tony back to Stark Tower, and he would do the next thing alone. Shenyan turned his head, and the commander followed behind him. He walked out of the main control room leisurely, without floating, just walking slowly, like digesting food after a meal. It was just a little bloody. The soldiers in the corridor all stopped in place. These well-trained and loyal soldiers wanted to save their commander, but they were fixed in place by the wizard. He snapped his fingers, and they pointed their guns at each other. The commander watched his soldiers pull the trigger with bloodshot eyes. The alternating red light illuminated the corridor, and the blood and brains on the wall looked like oil paintings. "Watch carefully, Commander. What I did to your soldiers, I will do to your people, including that supreme wisdom that you keep talking about in your mind. I will tear its fucking intestines out." "Does it have intestines, huh, Commander? Tell me." The commander's eyes were wide open, and he wanted to kill Shenyan on the spot with his eyes, but he could do nothing but watch the mage move around the battleship, killing all the soldiers on this star battleship bit by bit while strolling like a child's play. After doing all this, the mage brought the commander to the deck of the battleship. He squatted down, looked at the stars and said to the commander, "Isn't it strange that other battleships didn't fire at the Earth, nor did they come to support you?" He reached out his hand and personally turned the commander, who was pierced by needles like a piece of rotten meat, so that he could see the scene. The commander's body trembled slightly, tears welled up in his eyes, and Shenyan's voice sounded softly in his ears. "Look, isn't the explosion of the spaceship beautiful? I've wanted to try it for a long time. Last time I attacked the Skrulls, they died too quickly. This time, it's different." He laughed. His voice was very magnetic. "I have good news for you, Commander. They are not dead, not a single one. The souls of your soldiers are fixed in their bodies by me. Do you want to know why? You will see." Shenyan left him the last words, raised his right hand and pressed it against the deck. This spaceship that they were proud of, the proof of the Kree's military power, began to gradually disintegrate, turning into ashes bit by bit, and the soldiers inside it were exposed to the vacuum. The wizard waved to the place where the smaller warships exploded, and those soldiers also flew over. Their bodies began to twist and deform, directly exposed to the vacuum, and the wizard also deliberately used magic to strengthen their senses, but did not let them die. "Make sure they are in excruciating pain every minute and every second." "I almost forgot. Sound cannot be transmitted in a vacuum. I always feel something is missing when I can't hear their screams." The mage's voice fell into the commander's ears, and then, in the next second, he heard countless screams. There were men and women, and the voices were different. Some were just screaming, while others were howling in pain and wished they would die immediately. Some were chanting the names of their parents, and some were chanting the names of their children. The commander closed his eyes in pain. He didn't want to see this scene. These loyal soldiers should have returned home with honor, but now, nothing. Don't close your eyes, open them. You must see all this for it to make sense. Don't worry, you will be alive too. I will take you back to your planet and reunite your loved ones. The mage grabbed his head and forced him to open his eyes. The needles that pierced his body were retracted, and he felt an indescribable pain. The mage patted his head gently. He heard the wizard say, "Don't worry, everything will pass, you will not die, and the planet and civilization will not be destroyed like the Skrulls. Listen, Commander, here is what I will do to you and your people. I will take you back and make all the Kree into living specimens and place them on your capital planet for people to see. You will no longer enjoy dignity and rights as human beings, and you will not even be equal to livestock. You are just objects. I don't care about men, women, young or old, and I don't care if some of you oppose this invasion. I tell you, I don't care." The wizard looked at him, and there was no anger in his eyes, only calmness. "I don't care about your feelings, nor do I care about the feelings of others in the universe. I don't even care what my own kind thinks of me. I just want to make sure of one thing, and I will use you to make sure that this thing will be remembered by everyone in the universe. Do you want to guess what this thing is? There is a prize for guessing correctly." The wizard winked at him mischievously, and the commander just hoped that he could die immediately. 3K Chapter 102 The End of the Kree. The Kree-Lar planet in the large Magellanic Cloud, the capital of the Kree people, welcomed an uninvited guest today. After a tremor, the Kree-Lar planetary defense governor was horrified to find that they might be in great trouble. The artificial light source above Kree-Lar disappeared. This is a star that never goes out, an artificial sun, their pride, one of the proofs of the great technology of the Kree people that they are proud of. But today, it went out. Countless Kree people looked up at the sky in confusion. Above the dark starry sky, their artificial dome was opened. A black-robed wizard stood there. Then, destruction came. The first to arrive were corpses. Corpses fell from the sky in large numbers. They landed on the ground after a rapid descent. Soon, someone discovered that these Kree soldiers with painful faces and twisted limbs were still alive even if they were smashed into pulp. Their screams could even be heard from the pulp. This scene made many people scream directly. Chaos began to occur. Then came acid rain. Black raindrops fell from the sky, covering the entire Kree planet. The beautiful and solid buildings that they were proud of would be corroded and dissolved as soon as they got a little bit of it, not to mention the civilians. Soon, the entire Kree planet turned into a living hell. There were screaming Krees everywhere. They were not dead, but it was more painful than death. Living in the form of a pool of melted meat, they would always feel the burning pain. The wizard kept his words. He did not kill any Kree, but made them more painful than death. With the whistling sound of the spacecraft, a Kree soldier roared and attacked the wizard. Like his thousands of companions, he aimed at the wizard and pressed the launch button. Countless dense red beams flew towards the wizard, but were intercepted by a black shadow when they were about to approach him. The beams sank into it and disappeared. The wizard turned his head, and the red light in his eyes became brighter. A spaceship passed by him, and the Kree soldier sitting inside stared at him for a day. At that moment, he suddenly felt a heartfelt shudder, a fear that went deep into his bones. Before he could figure out why he had this feeling, he found that the wizard had disappeared. Where are they? He eagerly searched on the ship's radar. Other soldiers in the communication channel were also asking this question, but they found nothing, until a violent warning sounded. They looked up at the sky, and the voice of the planetary defense governor came from the communication channel. "Oh my God, that's our satellite." His words were not quite accurate. It was satellites. The large and small defense satellites that the Kree people were once proud of, which were spread all around the entire Kree, were now all blended together. They no longer had the beautiful appearance they once had, but formed a huge, constantly rotating iron ball. A strange voice sounded in their ears. "Get ready." No one needed to remind them of the consequences of this iron ball half the size of Kree falling to the ground. The governor roared in the channel, "Activate the annihilation wave. Shoot that thing down." His order was quickly implemented. A piece of open space on Kree opened up, and a huge silver metal tube stretched out from it. There was a complex floating magnetic ring on the top. As it started, the magnetic ring lit up, and the scarlet light began to condense. The whole planet began to shake. After a loud bang, the red and black annihilation wave hit the iron ball. The governor breathed a sigh of relief. He knew the power of the annihilation wave very well. This dangerous weapon could destroy a planet in an instant. In the past, the annihilation wave was not used many times, but it always won the victory for the Kree. He believed that this time would be the same. However, although he knew a lot about the technology of his own race, he knew nothing about the wizard. A shadow so huge that it could not be expanded instantly covered the sky above the entire Kree planet. The annihilation wave disappeared after entering it, just like a stone thrown into the sea. Then, the iron ball landed on the Kree's home planet, Hala. The Supreme Wisdom was listening to the report of a Kree herald. It looked like a huge blue head, ugly and full of wrinkles, soaked in a huge nutrient tank, and covered with disgusting mucus. But the Kree, from the common people to the current Emperor Dork VIII, had to obey its orders, because this ugly head was the crystallization of the wisdom of their entire tribe. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it was their god. The blue face of the herald showed an abnormal blue-gray color, and he looked like he was about to faint at any time. Supreme Wisdom, we have lost 40 planets in the past 3 days. According to the observation of the planetary telescope, the other party has approached Hala. And he also. What else did he do? A voice sounded, and Dork VIII, wearing the traditional royal costume of the Kree, walked in from the entrance of the hall. He was tall, about 3 meters tall, the result of their long-term genetic engineering. Dork VIII's physical strength was so strong that he could even destroy a building with one punch. Your Majesty, the herald stuttered, unable to utter a single complete word. Dork VIII made a cold gesture, and 2 guards came over and took him away. A light curtain lit up inside the hall, and the image of the planetary telescope came over. When Dork VIII saw the image, he understood why the herald had that reaction. The dead were screaming. They were his people, his soldiers, everything he had sworn to protect. Now they were all twisted limbs, floating in the cold universe with painful faces, and some were even just a pool of blue mud. They followed the damned wizard and formed a huge sphere. They were rapidly approaching the Hera star in the universe. Their screams could even be heard in a vacuum for some reason, and when the sound reached Dork VIII's ears, he was furious and vomited a mouthful of blood. Blood fell on the floor and was quickly cleaned up by the nanorobots. He waved his hand, signaling the soldiers who wanted to help him to retreat. Dork VIII wiped his mouth, and his voice resounded in the empty hall. What should we do? Supreme Wisdom. Wait. The huge blue head did not open its mouth, and its mechanical voice rang in the hall. It only uttered a cold word. Dork VIII did not ask why, nor did he ask who to wait for. He left the hall after getting this answer that could not be simpler. He began to faithfully execute the order of the Supreme Wisdom. Wait. After all, in the past so many years, the Supreme Wisdom has never made a mistake. He has reason to believe that the Supreme Wisdom has a way to deal with the wizard. It is the most shining pearl in the long history of the Kree people, and it is also the crystallization of their wisdom. Whatever it says, they will do. Chapter 103, The End of the Kree. Hello, Carol. The wizard put his hands behind his back and leisurely nodded to Carol Danvers, who was floating opposite him. The latter looked at the wizard with an unpleasant expression. She was interrupted by the wizard just as she was about to speak. I suggest you don't speak, Captain Marvel. He deliberately stretched out the other party's title, which sounded quite sarcastic. You don't have to. What don't have to? What do you want to say? Shenyan narrowed his eyes, and the red light in his eyes became brighter and brighter. Carol did not back down. She looked him in the eyes and replied, It's enough. Your revenge is enough. The Kree have paid enough. What does that have to do with you? Have you been a cosmic policeman for too long and your brain is damaged? You were not there when they invaded the Earth. You were not there when they planned to use a star destroyer to fire at the moon. And now, you jumped out and told me that it was enough? It is not up to you to decide whether it is enough or not. Understand? Shenyan's ruthless words made Carol take a deep breath. She said, If you only killed soldiers, I would not stop you. They died deservedly, but you killed civilians. They are innocent. If you do this, how will other people look at the people on Earth? Think about it. We can't let everyone in the universe be our enemy." The wizard seemed to have lost all his patience. He replied coldly, "They are not innocent at all. This is a war between races. It can only be said to be over when one of the parties is completely destroyed. Besides, I did not kill any Kree. Open your eyes and take a good look." Carol looked closely and almost felt dizzy. A huge sphere was floating in the dark universe, made up of Kree people who were still alive but worse off than dead. There were men and women, old and young, and without exception, they were all screaming and begging for death. "This is more cruel than killing them, you cruel demon," she growled angrily, with golden light in her eyes. "So what? What position are you standing on to talk to me? Have you ever thought that if I fail, humanity will end up like this, or even worse? When you stand on the moral high ground and accuse me at will, have you ever thought that you are an earthling?" Carol was speechless for a moment. She was silent for a while and said, "Of course I am an earthling. Do you deserve it?" Shenyan laughed. "While you were obsessed with being a cosmic policeman, the people in your hometown were suffering, and your power could have been used to help them and let them live a better life. But your reaction after getting this power was, no, there are other people who need my help, so you started running around the entire universe, playing a hero. Come on, is there something wrong with your brain?" And they said your chin is too square, so square that it has worn your brain flat. Can't you see that your people are in dire straits all the time? You were not there when the demons invaded, and you were not there when the Skrulls invaded. In the end, at the last moment of Thanos' invasion, when we had solved everything, you finally fucking arrived, flying in the sky showing off your power, and releasing a few energy waves to get it over with. Your role in that war was not as good as that of a dog on Earth. At least dogs would roar at those vicious aliens for their masters. You think you're an earthling? You don't deserve it. You said I'm an executioner. At least in the eyes of humans I am their hero. What about you? What are you? An alien hero? Ha! The sharp words of the wizard seemed to tear off the last layer of shame on Carol. Her face gradually turned pale, and then turned red at a certain moment. Without saying anything, she was shining with golden light and rushed towards the wizard. The power of the star explosion surged in her body, and her speed was amazing. In an instant, she was in front of the wizard. She raised her right fist and hit the wizard in the face. In her impression, although Shenyan was strong, he was not strong enough to compare with her. Therefore, she made up her mind to just beat him half to death and send him back. "Why do you always think that I have not made any progress?" he sighed. And Carol watched in horror as he slowly turned his head and dodged the punch she had thrown at the speed of light. Her thinking became dull at that moment, and the black ice had climbed up her body. "What is this?" The wizard looked at her with red eyes, and Carol suddenly felt a wave of sleepiness in her heart. She felt very cold and very tired. The feeling of emptiness followed her everywhere, and no matter how she resisted, it was useless. The energy that had been so powerful in the past disappeared. She was like a drowning person, and despair was like a bony claw, tightly grasping her heart. And all this was caused by just one hand of the wizard, his right hand gently placed on Carol's shoulder, and the endless explosive power in the latter's body was being quickly devoured by him. The wizard, with a brighter and brighter red light in his eyes, chuckled and said, "How do you feel?" The process of being demoted from a god to a mortal is not something that everyone can get used to. Of course, I don't really care about your feelings. I just asked casually. He increased the strength of the absorption, and the power in Carol's body gradually disappeared. The black ice that seemed to have never melted gradually spread to her whole body. The wizard said, "You are just a miracle born by chance. Carol, you used to be a human being. You gained this explosive power because of the Kree's hyperdrive, but you have never thought about where this power comes from, right? Let me tell you, the hyperdrive that gives you this ability is powered by the space gem. The energy in your body is endless, and it seems that you can use it unlimitedly as long as you want. You have exploded more than once, gaining stronger power in battle, and it seems that you don't have to follow certain rules at all, and you become stronger when facing a stronger opponent. But do you know where these powers come from? You idiot who doesn't think about making progress. The space gem created a connection in your body, allowing you to gain unlimited energy from one dimension. You could have gone further, But you chose another way, a stupid way. And now, they are mine. I won't kill you, at least not now. I will let you watch how I make the Kree people feel pain. Then, you will be in exhibits with them. Wrapped in black ice, Carol Danvers' eye sockets were sunken, her blonde hair turned gray, and her cheeks were sunken, making her look like a living skeleton. The once tight uniform now looked loose, and her eyes were full of despair. The villainous wizard waved his hand, and the black ice followed the huge sphere of Kree people and flew to the Kree's home planet. Chapter 104 Interlude. The honest man in a corner. Falcon tapped the steering wheel with his right index finger anxiously. His second-hand car was already very old, and it was parked on the road like an old man panting non-stop. The scene of the sky being obscured was too horrifying. Even if the sun came out again, the chaos it caused would not be resolved in a short time. He was ready to leave immediately after receiving Steve's message. It took 3 to 4 hours to drive or take a train from New York to the White House. Although it only took an hour to fly, no one dared to take off in the doomsday scene at that time. He had no choice but to drive his second-hand car. Now he was stuck on the highway and couldn't move. There were honking and quarreling sounds all around. He saw 2 men fighting with baseball bats. They didn't seem to have any grudges against each other, but just did it for fun. A car on his right side hit the guardrail, and the driver inside flew out on the spot. His head and body were separated, and blood was all over the ground. All he got was a few sporadic screams. It was a mess. Sam's heart had never been so anxious as it was now. He once again began to hate the government system. At such a time, they could not get any news about stabilizing the people's hearts. The only news that could be heard on the radio was the mayor's call for people not to go out and wait for rescue at home. Apart from these, there were endless riots, fires, and shootings. Damn it! He suddenly hammered the steering wheel hard and honked the horn. The sound made the man in the silver convertible in front of him turn his head. He was wearing a coat with silver sequins and a pair of high heels on his head that he got from nowhere. He tied it tightly to his forehead with a strap, which looked funny and ridiculous. The man got out of the car and slapped Sam's front hood hard, cursing some dirty words. Sam closed his eyes and began to take deep breaths. He tried hard to restrain himself from getting out of the car to beat him, but the man obviously took his concession as weakness. He took off his tight leather pants, exposed his buttocks to Sam, and shook and cursed him. Just when Sam was about to lose control, there was a loud bang on the roof of his car. The sound startled the man and he fell face first to the ground. Sam leaned out and found a silver briefcase on the roof of his car. In the middle was a big red A wrapped in a black circle, and on the lower right was the logo of Stark Enterprises. Sam looked at the briefcase, as if he was not sure if it was a dream, until Jarvis' voice sounded from the briefcase. "Mr. Sam, Mr. Tony has sent your equipment to you." "Tony?" "Yes, Mr. He sent him back to Stark Tower through the portal 15 minutes ago." "I don't know what to say, Jarvis. I'm here. What do you want?" "No, nothing. I just want to say." He took the box down. His movements were as gentle as facing a lover. Sam kicked open the door of the used car and jumped out with the suitcase. He could no longer suppress his excitement. "It's nice to see you." Steve slammed the helmet in his hand on the table, and his roar was heard even by people outside the door. "Are you kidding me, sir? We are discussing the safety of people's lives now. Can't you see? I don't believe that no one has reported to you that there is large-scale chaos in all parts of the country, and you are sitting behind your desk without moving." The middle-aged man opposite him said nothing. He shook his head and said to Steve in a calm and restrained tone, "Captain, although I admire your concern for our people, but the Avengers have been disbanded, and you are not a member of SHIELD or the FBI. Strictly speaking, you endure." He glanced at Hawkeye with a bow in his hand. "Former S.H.I.E.L.D. members who rashly broke into the White House, we can sue you. But for your sake, Captain, I will let you leave safely. Please don't break in here again. Next time, you won't be so lucky." Hawkeye couldn't help but say, "Move your fat ass off that chair, call reporters to hold a press conference, and tell people that the danger is over." "Is it so difficult for you?" "What's difficult about this?" "I don't understand." "This involves many international issues, Mr. Clint. For national security reasons, I can't disclose it to you." He smiled politely and his words were impeccable. "You dirty politician," Hawkeye cursed in a low voice. The man raised his eyebrows, pushed his glasses, and said, "I can't pretend I didn't hear that. Mr. Client, your words constitute personal attacks and defamation against me. I will punish you according to the law." He didn't finish his words, because he was hit hard in the face. His nose was broken and blood was flowing. The man stared at Steve, who was punching him, and he didn't react. Hawkeye watched as Steve dragged him out from behind his desk, sat on him and started beating him. 1 punch, 2 punches, 3 punches. Of course, he could see that Steve was holding back his strength, but it was still too heavy a punch for this pampered bastard, and he was soon knocked unconscious. His face was covered in bruises, and even his forehead was swollen. Steve was still not satisfied. If anyone else was here, it would be hard to believe what could have driven him to this point, but Hawkeye understood him. They arrived at the White House in time at the beginning, hoping to launch a nuclear bomb to help Shenyan, but the answer they got was that the president had died of unknown reasons and no one had the right to do so. It would be bad if other countries thought they were going to start a war. If his words could be reluctantly believed, then what he did next was completely challenging Steve's bottom line. He left Steve and Hawkeye alone for an hour. No one knew whether Shenyan could deal with those fleets, and Steve didn't understand why this politician had more confidence in Shenyan than their former companions. He seemed to be certain that those fleets would be dealt with by the black-robed wizard, and he completely ignored the possibility of failure, and even didn't consider the consequences. Fortunately, he finally dealt with the fleet, and the darkness that had lasted for an hour receded, and Steve and Hawkeye were relieved. Frank on the Quinjet told them that chaos was erupting all over the country, and countless casualties were caused. Steve immediately wanted this guy to hold a press conference, but he kept passing the buck. In this way, the honest man was forced into a corner. He also saw the consequences. "I was thinking of writing 2 chapters today. It's the new year, and I want to spend time with my family. But anyway, I'm free, so I'll write 1 more chapter. There should be another chapter later." Chapter 105 Interlude, Reunion. "What are you going to do, Steve?" Steve let go of his hand and wiped the blood on the man's collar with disgust. He took a deep breath and was about to speak when there was a sound of breaking air outside the window of this office, and a figure broke through the window and flew in. "Sam, it's me, Steve." Sam Wilson, dressed in new clothes, stood in front of them. His wings were folded behind him, and he was wearing a pure black streamlined uniform. The silver A on his chest and the 2 silver pulse pistols on his waist were shining. He took off his goggles and said with a smile, "Hello, Client." "Damn, man, where did you get this equipment from?" "Tony asked him to send it to me." "Tony? Ha." Jarvis said he was sent back by he. "I think this will be a long story again. Anyway, it's nice to see you." Steve smiled sincerely, put on his helmet, and used the multifunctional armor on his right hand to call Frank and Rod in the Quinjet, intending to leave here and make plans. At this moment, a frivolous voice squeezed into their communication channel. Tony Stark's iconic voice sounded, "Hello, has anyone missed me?" "Damn, Tony, is it really you? When did you come back?" Rod said in shock. "It's the real deal, I just got home." "Who else has such a magnetic voice besides me?" "Hey, Rod, I heard that your armor was taken away." Tony's voice was full of laughter, and he teased, "Yeah, but you should have more, right?" Rod laughed twice, but got an ambiguous answer from Tony. I should, I don't know. TSK, are there any?" Rod laughed and sprayed a phrase starting with F, and he and Tony exchanged F more than a dozen times in a minute. "You sound very weak." Frank's cold and somewhat weak voice sounded in the channel. "You are not much different, my friend." "We are both the same, but I was tortured by a group of aliens for 2 years, so I should be a little worse than you." "Your desire to win is still so childish." Frank snorted and laughed, and said nothing more. "Where's the captain? Why can't I hear him talking?" Tony asked again. "I'm here, Tony." "Ah, you still sound so righteous." "How are you, Captain America? How are you doing lately?" "No Captain America, Tony." There was silence in the voice channel for a while before Tony continued. "Well, it seems like a long story, but we can talk about it slowly when we meet. I'll be at the White House soon. Hey, does anyone want to eat something after we're done? I'll treat you. To be honest, I miss those junk foods so much. On the Quinjet, Tony, who had taken off his helmet, was chewing a burger, which he bought from a common food cart stand when he passed by. He had originally planned to save his stomach for a big meal at the dinner party later, but the burger looked really good. He was wolfing it down at this time, finishing one in 2 or 3 bites. Tony grabbed the iced Coke beside him and drank a big gulp without even using a straw, without caring about his image, although he really didn't have any image at the moment. In order to facilitate access to his memory, the Kree shaved off his beard and hair. Thinking of this, he touched the back of his head with some lingering fear. The feeling of having a tube inserted in his brain was not good at all. He swallowed the Coke in his mouth and said, So, Rhodes asked, so you don't plan to explain to me where you are going now? You are eating too deliciously, Tony. We don't have the heart to disturb you. Well, you really should learn how to chat, Rhodes. You haven't made any progress in so many years. Also, Jarvis. Jarvis' voice replaced the onboard eye and rang in the cabin. I'm here, sir. When will the new armor of our Mr. Rhodes who lost his armor arrive? It's expected to arrive in 2 minutes, sir. Tony spread his hands towards Rhodes. You heard it all. I hope you haven't forgotten how to put it on. Seriously, how come so many things happened as soon as I left? Frank leaned against the wall. It started with when I left, and it doesn't seem to have anything to do with your departure. And your new hairstyle looks really funny. Tony rolled his eyes. No one will think you are dumb if you don't speak. Frank, don't rush to discuss my hairstyle. Why is your right eye gone? Hawkeye immediately interrupted. He said this is proof that he killed 70 people with his bare hands. Do you believe it? Sam scratched his cheek and said hesitantly, well, I actually still believe it. Hey, Sam, have you forgotten who delivered the clothes you are wearing? Tony said immediately unhappily. Capitalist, do you think your armor can buy everyone? Humphrey, at least Wilson still has a conscience. Frank took advantage of every opportunity to be sarcastic to Tony Stark. Me? Capitalist? Damn it, you can't call me that. 60% of Stark Enterprises' annual profits are used for charity. I saw it myself. Steve sat in the corner, watching everything in front of him with a smile, watching this group of people joking with each other, just like in the past. He sighed softly, and Tony noticed his expression. He immediately deliberately said loudly, Hey, Captain America, what's wrong with you? Why are you so bitter? Captain America is dead, Tony, Steve said softly. His reaction made Tony frown, and the atmosphere in the cabin became weird. Hey, man, you have to tell me what happened. Your reaction, your reaction is unusual. He tried to make jokes to liven up the atmosphere, but the atmosphere had dropped to freezing point. Everyone's expression became serious. Jack Richard is dead. When did it happen? Tony's smile disappeared. It wasn't until a few days later. Tony, he died because of me. Listen, let's talk about this later. It's a long story. We've landed. Steve changed the subject, and the Quinjet landed smoothly. The cabin door opened, and everyone saw a person who should have been dead long ago. Only Tony's face turned cold. I remember you were dead, Steve hurriedly said. Calm down, Tony. Bucky did die once, and he was resurrected by he later. But Tony's face still didn't get better. He pointed at the long-haired man who looked like a homeless man and said, Listen, man, you died once, so I won't bother you about my parents, but don't expect me to forgive you, understand? The long-haired man nodded slightly. I agreed to update it later. Chapter 106, Arms, New Armor, and the Death of Dork 8. The atmosphere in the cabin was no longer as good as before. The long-haired man sat in the corner in silence. He was wearing a long-sleeved black sweater, and even had a black glove on his left hand, covering all his skin. Tony and Rhodes sat on the other side. Rhodes put on a brand new armor, silver and gray, and Tony was introducing the functions to him. It doesn't have live ammunition, but it's definitely better than your old machine guns. There is an energy cannon on each shoulder, which can fire super high-temperature energy balls, which can even kill main battle tanks in one go. More importantly, they have no recoil. Back of the hand, I installed a beam gun for you, a special model, which does not need to be charged and has a smaller power. If you don't want to make the scene too ugly, you can use this. The magazine capacity is 150 rounds, and it will automatically reload after shooting. It draws the energy of the armor itself. He chattered on and on, as if he was back to his old job. Rhodes listened attentively, and he looked like he couldn't wait to use these things to shoot something and have a good fight. Frank, Hawkeye and Sam slipped into the cab. They were too lazy to pay attention to the weird atmosphere in the rear cabin. Steve came over, sat next to Bucky, took a look at his left hand and asked, "How does it feel?" Bucky didn't say anything. He raised his left hand and took off the glove. It couldn't be called a hand anymore. The black scales were layered and looked like a monster's claw. Bucky didn't stop. He then rolled up his sleeves to his elbows. The complete arm was exposed. Tony and Rhodes also cast their eyes over. It was all black, with some gaps between the scales, and the 5 fingers were sharp and slender. "Damn, man, this thing looks like something from a video game," Rhodes said. "Does it hurt?" Steve asked. "No, but I can't sleep at night. This thing will glow at night. It's too bright. I don't know how to stop it," Bucky said expressionlessly. He seemed to be telling a cold joke, but no one in the room could laugh. "So not only are you alive, but you also have an LED light on your hand that you don't know how to turn off? Ha, that's a good joke, buddy." Tony laughed. Rod didn't make a tasteless joke like Tony did. He asked, "So, what other uses does this thing have? Why did I resurrect you and give you this arm? It can't really be just an LED light, right?" Bucky turned his left hand and said, "Well, I don't need an axe when chopping wood. I just need to scratch it with my fingers." "Does this count?" Tony couldn't help but look up. He said speechlessly, "Has anyone told you, buddy, that you are really good at telling jokes?" "Thank you." Bucky actually thanked him seriously. Tony turned his head and said to Rod, "Is he really thanking me?" "Is he? Do you think he's serious, Rod? Can't he hear what I mean?" Rod lowered his visor, and his figure came dully from the helmet, and it was a series of laughter. "Damn it, did the Kree take my sense of humor and my hair away?" "Why are you laughing so happily?" Tony said depressedly. The Kree Emperor, Dork 8, was lying on the ground without grace. Half of his body had become bloody and his internal organs could be seen directly through the hole in his stomach. He was no longer able to speak at this time. He could only stare at the sky lit by flames and utter a sound from his throat that only he could hear clearly. Shenyan stood beside him, looking at this Kree Emperor who was famous for his cruelty and ruthlessness in the galaxy with a smile. He squatted down and listened carefully to the small and vague sound coming from Dork 8's throat. After a moment, he asked jokingly, "How do you feel, Kree Emperor?" The wizard's voice was low and distant. To Dork 8, it sounded like a conversation across several galaxies, not like talking in his ear at all. The distortion was very strong. Hearing this voice, a hatred drove him to move. Dork 8 tried his best to turn his neck so that his eyes could see the wizard, the demon who destroyed his country and killed countless civilians. Shenyan looked at him without hesitation and whispered, "Do you want to say something, Emperor of the Kree?" Dork 8's green eyes reflected the wizard's figure. He raised his left hand with all his strength and grabbed the wizard's sleeve, as if he wanted to say something. However, Shenyan stood up directly next. His hand slipped weakly. He stood up and walked into the Hall of the Supreme Wisdom in front of Dork 8, leaving him with only a cold word, "I'm sorry, I don't want to listen." Dork 8 lay in the same place, and his eyes gradually began to double. The feeling of fatigue was spreading from his bones. He had never experienced this feeling before. As the most advanced achievement of the Kree genetic engineering, he had seemingly endless physical strength since birth. No matter what knowledge he learned, he could master it quickly, and he was even a natural psychic. He could use all kinds of powerful mental powers. As he grew up and matured, the power contained in his body was also developed. Before he inherited the throne, he had been a gladiator on a gladiatorial planet in the Centauri galaxy. In a year and a half, he relied purely on physical strength to create a legend of undefeated victories. At that time, he even thought he was invincible. But all of these, whether it was strength or the glory of being a royal family, were like bubbles that could be broken when facing that wizard. He saw with his own eyes that countless fleets outside the planet of Hala were easily destroyed, and the overwhelming antimatter missiles and black hole rays were swallowed up by this wizard as if it were a child's play. The wreckage of those fleets could even be seen directly from the ground. After that, the energy level observed on his radar was even higher than before. Thousands of psychic masters worked together and tried to control him at the cost of their lives, but they were invaded in the brain instead. Half of the planet of Hala was reduced to ashes in the psychic storm. Countless Kree souls screamed in the storm. How to win against such an enemy? Dorkate gradually fell into a cold consciousness, and a thought slowly floated through his mind. It was a thought that he had never thought of in his long life before. He would even be regarded as treason if he spoke it out. He thought, is the Supreme Wisdom really never wrong? I'm sorry for being late. There will be another update later. After eating the New Year's Eve dinner, I will have another New Year's Eve dinner tomorrow. I'm so busy. After tomorrow, I will resume normal updates. I will do an extra 10,000 words first. Chapter 107, The End of the Kree. Walking into the hall, the powerful psychic energy immediately turned into mental tentacles and attacked the mage. The target was not his body, but his soul. However, the mage easily blocked it in the middle, and he even intercepted a part and ate it. The chewing sound came from the shadow under his feet, and the red light in his eyes surged again. The mage commented, "It tastes terrible." The Supreme Wisdom floated in its nutrient jar, and there was no expression on its ugly blue face. "You won, mage." It did not open its mouth, and the mechanical voice echoed in the hall. "Do I need your recognition to know whether I won or not?" The Supreme Wisdom seemed to have given up resistance. It restrained its psychic energy and no longer tried to touch the mage. It floated quietly in the huge jar, like an ugly biological specimen. "Why, you give up just like that?" Shenyan stood in front of him with his hands behind his back and said casually, "You are stronger than any of us. You deserve to win this victory. This is the law of nature. Now, come and take your spoils." Although there was no emotion in his voice, the words spoken by the Supreme Wisdom were still quite graceful, and even contained some philosophical meaning. But the wizard didn't think so. He suddenly became interested. He said, "Do you know what I am going to do to the Kree?" There was still no fluctuation in the voice of the Supreme Wisdom. It said calmly, "I know. You deliberately balanced the boundary between life and death, allowing them to wander infinitely between life and death, and exist forever in pain. Can you accept this outcome?" "Why not?" the Supreme Wisdom asked back. It continued, "The Kree have not died out and we still exist. That's enough. In the universe, new races are born and new races are destroyed every day. As long as it exists, it continues. But you will no longer make progress, and no new Kree will be born. You will even be used as specimens for people to visit. Your history will be left for people to read, and the technological crystallization condensed by the blood and sweat of your predecessors will be taken away at will. Even so, do you accept it?" "Yes." The Supreme Wisdom's ugly blue face was still expressionless, and its voice rang inside the hall, cold and with pure rationality. "If the Kree's technology continues in other races, then culture can too. Sooner or later, someone will be interested in our traditions. They will understand, spread, and even become spiritual Kree." "I understand," Shenyan suddenly realized, and he said, "Your goal is the continuation of the Kree people. In order to achieve this goal of continuation, you will do whatever it takes, even using any means." "Yes, Master," the Supreme Wisdom admitted frankly. "But there is one thing I don't understand." Shenyan narrowed his eyes and asked, "Why do you want to invade the Earth?" "I can't say." "Do you want to say it but can't, or can you say it but don't want to?" The Supreme Wisdom fell silent for the first time. The sticky transparent liquid in its nutrient tank was quickly fading and was discharged into the underground pipes. The lips of this biological computer trembled, and it tried to make its own voice for the first time. Its real voice was no different from the voice spoken by psychic power, just as cold. "I can't say, Master." "Another secret, isn't it?" One ring after another, endless. Shenyan sighed. "You know, I'm really tired of these things." After he said this, the magic and mental tentacles burst out together, and this holy place of the Kree people, the residence of the Supreme Wisdom, collapsed in an instant. The voice of the wizard was still clear as the smoke and dust dispersed. "Supreme Wisdom, You know, you have no emotions, so you can accept the Kree people gaining eternal life in endless pain, because in the eyes of your computer, this ending is acceptable. I don't know how many times you have calculated it, and how many endings you have expected. But you definitely didn't calculate this one. The smoke and dust dispersed, and the wind began to gather. The fragments of the city, the wreckage of the spacecraft, and the dead but still alive Kree people were blown up by the wind and gradually merged into one in the magic. The ground began to collapse, and the artificial dome in the sky was torn open again. The dark clouds condensed, and the torrential rain that should not have appeared fell again. It has been a very long time since there has been natural rainfall on the planet Hera. Their weather control machine keeps it sunny here forever. The raindrops fell, and the blood began to be washed away, mixed with the wailing of the Kree people. The wizard flew up, his black hair dancing in the wind, his robe fluttering, and his eyes glowing red. The supreme wisdom floated beside him. The wizard said, "You have no feelings, so you won't feel pain, but I want you to have feelings, because only in this way will you truly regret your actions." "Do you know what I'm going to do?" the supreme wisdom asked calmly. "I don't know. There is no record of what you are doing now in our database." "Then write it down," the wizard laughed. "I want to make you a god, supreme wisdom." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his right hand high, and a huge amount of magic power surged out again, black mixed with gold. The strong wind, lightning, collapsing ground and people's screams together formed this concerto. If you are in space, you will find that the star Hera is slowly disappearing. Its size is getting smaller and smaller. On the contrary, a blue dot is gradually taking shape in the center of Hera, becoming larger and more obvious. Do you know, supreme wisdom? Although the Kree people don't know it themselves, and you don't know it either, they do regard you as a god. They believe in you. The supreme wisdom was speechless at this time. It floated in the storm, surrounded by the corpses of the Kree people. This situation was not calculated in any way. The voice of the wizard was clearly heard through the storm. Faith in God is a kind of creature like God. It is very inferior. It lives and dies with its believers, and its own emotions and memories are even affected by its believers. And what I am going to do to you now is to make you a god. The form of the supreme wisdom was changing rapidly under the will of the wizard. It no longer had the ugly big head image before, but became a genderless bald Kree. Naked, it stood quietly in the storm. The wizard's magic power was poured into his body with the faith of the Kree people. His skin cracked inch by inch, and pure screams jumped out of the cracks. The new image he obtained began to collapse and melted bit by bit. It turned into a pool of bloody and screaming mud, and then it turned into a Kree soldier who lost his head, or a Kree civilian, and even flashed the image of Dorkgate. "Now, you have feelings," the supreme wisdom screamed. For the first time in its life, it felt negative emotions such as pain, sorrow, and despair. Its voice even penetrated the storm, and all the Kree people heard it. "What have you done to me? What have you done to me?" "Mage, stop. Why are you so ungrateful? How many people want to become gods but have no way to do so?" Shenyan smiled. With its last scream, the planet Halid disappeared, and the bodies of the Kree people also disappeared, leaving only a huge corpse floating in the starry sky. It was the image of a Kree, with a big hole in its chest, screaming in this cold starry sky. The inaudible noise turned into spiritual energy and instantly shattered several planets around it. "From now on, you are the god of the Kree people, the supreme wisdom." After saying this, he turned and left. The god of the Kree people will scream and suffer endlessly in the universe. It will always wander between life and death, just like its people. And what it expected, the spread of the Kree people's technology and culture to all parts of the galaxy, is no longer possible, because its painful scream will kill anyone who tries to approach. This is the end of the Kree people. It took a while to code. Sorry, I was mainly thinking about how to make them die more miserably. Oh, it seems that they didn't die. Chapter 108 Lost and Found. You haven't told Pepper you're back yet? Yeah, I think it's better to wait until everything is resolved before telling her. Tony fiddled with the smart watch on his hand absent-mindedly. It was a little gadget Clint bought not long ago. He saw it and itched to play with it, so he took it to study it. The question is, Tony, Don't you think she will definitely quarrel with you again by then? Rhodes couldn't help it. He said. What's the reason for the quarrel? Tony raised his head and asked puzzledly. Rod supported his forehead helplessly and asked, how did you get to be the #1 on the Playboy list? I'm rich. Hawkeye rolled his eyes while leaning against the cabin wall. He interrupted, with his personality. If this guy wasn't rich, he would have been stabbed to death dozens of times. Ha, Clint, you shallow person. I feel sad for you. Is it just my money that allows me to date so many beautiful women? Doesn't my handsome face have any appeal at all? Tony pointed at his face, which had neither beard nor hair, with a serious face, full of some mysterious confidence. Frank's low laughter came from the cockpit. Their gossip was interrupted by Jarvis, and the eye's gentle synthetic voice sounded in the Quinjet. We have arrived at our destination, gentlemen. The Quinjet landed smoothly on the ground, and they were now in the wilderness of Texas. Everyone walked out slowly, and Frank was supported by Rod and Hawkeye. His face was still very pale. Steve and Tony walked in the front, looking at the empty space in front of them, and they were silent for a long time. What a strange feeling. Tony suddenly turned his head and said to Steve, I thought I wouldn't miss this place. In fact, we probably all miss it very much, Steve said. As soon as he finished speaking, Jarvis opened the long silent base. With the sound of mechanical operation, the ground slowly opened to both sides. They walked in. Dust was all over the corridor, and the faint blue light shone on each of their faces. They walked straight to the end of the corridor, and Tony walked forward. He opened the visor of his helmet and opened his eyes wide at a place on the wall. Welcome back, Iron Man. The smooth wall suddenly cracked a little, and the machine inside scanned his pupils, and the whole base lit up instantly. The voice of the built-in eye machine sounded in this dusty base for many years. The wall suddenly opened to both sides, and the room inside looked like a conference room, with only a silver alloy table and 7 chairs made of the same material. I've only heard of this place. Sam looked around. He was a little surprised. Frank was placed on a dusty chair by Rod. The old man with one eye blind coughed twice. His voice was hoarse and low. Many people have never even heard of it. Boy, you are very lucky. How many years have you not closed this place? Hawkeye said with some sigh. Steve didn't say anything. He walked to the side of the table and brushed the dust on it with his hand. A red A surrounded by a black circle appeared on it. As he moved, the table made a buzzing sound. Its surface slowly lit up. Blue light emerged, and 7 patterns flashed by. A shield, an iron mask, a bow and arrow, a spider, a green Godzilla, a warhammer, and a black-robed figure. After they all flashed, the mechanical voice of the built-in eye sounded again. Welcome, Captain America. Steve smiled and said familiarly, Star D9 protocol. Start connecting to global satellite. Iron Man's authorization is required. Tony put his hand on the table and said, authorization. Connected to Jarvis, hacking into the satellite. Global satellite is connected. Steve took a deep breath and said, start national broadcast. Mark picked up the pistol with trembling hands. He knew that there was still 1 bullet left in the gun, which was left after he was drunk and shot the gun last weekend. He was lucky that he didn't kill himself. Living in this cheap apartment in Hell's Kitchen, living one more day is a blessing from God. Even if he doesn't kill himself after a hangover, he will be killed by someone or something sooner or later. He looked at the pistol and suddenly realized that his arm was shaking. The man was deflated. He threw the pistol with a wry smile and walked away. The pistol lying on the dirty floor was even forgotten to be turned on. The news was still playing on TV. The host talked about the situation across the country over and over again, calling on people to remain calm. Don't go to the streets. Don't participate in riots. Stay in your own home. The government will definitely provide rescue. However, in the 4 hours from dark to dawn, no official came out to explain all this. Maybe there was, but he didn't see it on TV. Mark didn't care about it at all. He had long lost hope in the system of this country. He stood up from his dirty sofa, and stepped on the carpet with his right foot without slippers. A sticky feeling made him raise his foot with disgust, and found that the pizza he ordered last night was overturned and fell on it. Now his foot has made the carpet even dirtier. Mark grumbled. He didn't care so much, just walked to the window with his beer belly, pulled open the curtains a little and peeked out. The street was full of overturned cars and crazy people. He saw a guy dressed like Marilyn Manson holding an oversized purple fake X in his hand and laughing and chasing another guy in Patrick costume. The two quickly ran across the end of the street. At the other end, a black man wearing a turban was threatening two other black men with a gun. Mark didn't know what he said, but the guy didn't get what he wanted. The two black men pulled out guns from their baggy pants. The three of them started shooting at each other on the street and finally fell to the ground together. A skinny black dog ran over carefully and began to lick the blood of the turban black man. Mark suddenly felt nauseous. He quickly closed the curtains and the room returned to darkness. He ran into his small and dirty toilet, put his head into the toilet and vomited violently. After vomiting, he fell weakly on his tile floor covered with unknown black substances, leaning against the yellow wall behind him, and suddenly remembered his childhood. He grew up in Kansas. It was a good place, with good people and good land. His father and uncle were farmers who worked the land and were honest and decent. The cornfield was the place where most of his interesting childhood memories took place. But it happened that the hippie trend blew to his hometown. The young man ran to New York with a broken guitar. It didn't work. He had lost contact with his family long ago, and the guitar disappeared long ago, and he couldn't even remember how he lost it. There were a few times when Mark had a brief impulse to get it back. He tried his best to remember which experience he had lost the guitar after being high on the cloud, but he couldn't remember it. Now, he has achieved nothing, is 47 years old, and lives in a cheap apartment. His neighbors are thieves, liars, robbers, drug dealers and murderers. He worked as a parking lot guard, but he lost this job after he went to work drunk again. Mark's mind played the past memories, and he suddenly found that he couldn't remember his father's face. The voice of the host on the TV disappeared after a burst of electric sound, and was replaced by a male voice that he thought was very familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had heard it before. Mark hit his head painfully, and he found that he seemed to be unable to remember anything. In his memory, 80% of the time is about alcohol, drugs, sex and violence. There was also the manic rock music in the background. Apart from that, he couldn't remember anything. The man's voice said, "Many people should know me, but have never seen me. My name is Steve Rogers. You may be more familiar with my other name. Yes, I am Captain America." Captain America? The noisy sounds around stopped. The screams and cries, the laughter, the barking of dogs, the sound of the car automatic alarm and the gunshots seemed to have disappeared. Mark stood up and ran to the living room with sticky vomit hanging on his chin, but he didn't care about that at all. The middle-aged man with a beer belly just focused on the TV screen. The man on the TV took off his helmet, revealing a handsome face. He said, "Time is running out, so I'll be brief. Those of you watching TV or radio, please listen carefully. The darkness incident 4 hours ago was not what you thought, a punishment from God, proof of the destruction of the earth, or a conspiracy by some madman who wants to rule the world. It was just an alien invasion." He smiled. "Yes, aliens again. We've faced it many times, haven't we? Don't worry, because the matter has been resolved." But what did our government do during the whole process? They did nothing. They didn't take any action. They just sat there. They claim to be the world's #1 power, but in this situation they are not even willing to launch nuclear bombs to attack the aliens. I can't help but think of the war we fought with the Chitauri in Texas in 2012. The governor of Texas at the time did this against all odds without orders from his superiors. He dispatched the army and police, and emptied all the large weapons and missiles in the state. He even went on TV to give a speech, hoping that men with weapons would pick up guns and protect their children and wives. He set an example himself by blowing off the heads of 4 Chitauri with his shotgun during the war. We won the war, but this brave governor didn't get what he deserved after the war. He was fired, sued, and now he's even in jail. Even though his actions saved countless lives, I can't help but ask, is this the American government? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is what happened to that governor. Many of you may not have heard of him, but this is reality. Open your eyes, Americans. If you're watching TV, if you're listening to the radio, or anywhere you can see this footage and hear my voice, please open your eyes and take a good look around you. Look at your home. Look at the helpless people and the bodies. Don't blame them, because they're just ordinary people. And the elites we elected through elections sit in their offices and do nothing about it. They don't make speeches to reassure the people. They don't tell you what happened. They don't do disaster relief. They don't rescue. And they refuse to take any action. I don't know why they're doing this. I have no clue. But I don't care anymore. Steve Rogers said, if they choose to abandon us, then we should abandon them in return. Listen up, citizens. If you consider yourself an American, if you want to protect your property, your family, your life, or if you simply think that those office bastards are unreliable, then please listen to me carefully. Mark opened his mouth blankly, and he looked at the TV screen. Listening to his words, his flabby face suddenly became bright. He ran to the bathroom, washed his face, and ran to the closet to frantically search for his clothes. In the messy pile of clothes, he found his last set of clothes that could still be worn. It was an old pair of overalls. He put it on, even though his belly had already stretched it into a round arc, but he still put it on. He didn't know how he did it. He listened to the figure of Steve Rogers on TV, picked up his pistol, and put it in the chest pocket of his overalls. He ran into the room again, trying to grab a hat and run out. He tripped over something in his hurried steps, and a sound that made his hair stand on end echoed in the room. He soon recognized that it was the sound of a guitar. Sweat dripped from his forehead. He bent down and lay down, and saw a long black bar poking out from under his bed. Mark carefully dragged it out. It was his guitar. Although the guitar was covered in dust, it was not broken. Its wooden body had lost paint and turned white, but it was not rotten. Mark began to tune it, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth that he didn't even notice, although he hadn't touched a guitar in so many years. When he touched it, it was as if something awakened in the depths of his soul. He began to tune it. When everything was done, he grabbed a hat, ran to the door in sweat, put on a pair of Converse shoes and ran out the door. The guitar was on his back, hitting his butt as he ran. He had a pistol with only one bullet left on his waist, and his face was covered with sweat. He even forgot to close the door. Steve Rogers' voice came from the TV, a little distorted, but still very clear. His words were sonorous and powerful, like a roar. If they don't do what they should do, then we will do it ourselves. God bless America? No, people bless America. I'm too lazy to separate it after writing it. I feel that this chapter will be incomplete if it is separated. Posted together. 10,000 tomorrow. I feel that this speech will be written in the history book in the book. It is called Television Speech. I guess everyone can see that the Captain America I wrote has become the people's captain. At least half of it has succeeded. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109. All the mages died of overwork. Inside the room, Tony's expression was extremely serious. He asked, "Do you know what you are doing, Steve? Your behavior just now is enough for those bastards to declare you a treasonous person. If they could, they would have done it long ago." Compared to Tony's solemnity, Steve seemed very relaxed. He seemed to have unloaded a burden, and there was even a faint smile on his face. "Damn it, Steve, you just gave them a reason to do that. You were just declared a wanted criminal a minute ago, on charges of undermining national security." "Damn it, I'll go talk to them. Maybe I can." "No need, Tony. I have been living in New York for 7 years after we disbanded. This is the largest city in the United States, but you can always see homeless people walking on the street. Some of them are to blame for themselves, but most of them are just because of temporary bad luck. The root cause lies in the system of our government. You know." "Forget it." Steve was talking excitedly. He wanted to start a long speech, but he stopped abruptly. He shook his head and said, "Let's go to New York first." "Although I don't know what you are going to do in New York, Captain, I'm sorry, we may have more urgent things to do right now." A familiar voice interrupted their conversation with the opening of a portal. Strange walked out of it. He was soaked, with sticky black liquid all over his body. There was a long wound on his cheek, and blood was still oozing out. "Strange, are you willing to come out of your little house? But why do you look like you just came back from unclogging the sewer?" Hawkeye said half-jokingly. "No, Clint, although I hate to say that." Strange glanced at him. The tired man slapped his face hard. He crossed his hands and mobilized his magic with his trembling hands to release an observation magic. But we are really in big trouble. Everyone present was shocked by the picture he showed. It was a city they were all very familiar with, New York. At this moment, above the city, there were dozens of black monsters with white wings on their backs slaughtering in the city. Looking at the horrifying scene, Tony pinched his brows. Okay. First it was the aliens, and now it's these damn magic creatures. Do you know where they come from? They are monsters formed by the power of Scython, but the wings on their backs are from heaven. Heaven? Hawkeye asked. Wait, who is Scython? Sam also interrupted. Yes, heaven. Scython is the world's first black magician. He is also the god of black magic, the great demon Shadow, and one of the elder gods. Listen, Sam, if you are interested in the history of magic, I welcome you to come to the sanctuary to read books later. But now, we must solve this problem quickly, otherwise, I doubt whether we can see the sun tomorrow. Okay, I don't care who he is. What should we do? Steve picked up his helmet and asked. The power of Scython has enveloped the entire earth. This is not normal. The power of the ancient gods is too strong. They usually cannot directly invade our world like this. Forcible entry will cause the world to be torn apart, and as powerful individuals, they will be directly watched by the gods outside the domain. Someone must have done something during this period of time. Strange lowered his head and thought. It was hard to tell whether he was talking to himself or explaining to everyone. When he finally sorted out the clues, he felt a pain like a thorn in the back bursting out from the depths of his brain. He looked up suddenly. Frank, who was sitting on the chair, had his head lowered. His left hand on his knees was already on fire. Without time to explain, Strange pushed Tony Stark, who was blocking him. Boom! The deafening explosion resounded through the clouds. In the scattered smoke, a trace of blood flowed from the corner of Strange's mouth and slowly flowed down. The orange-yellow shield blocked everyone behind him, and no one was injured, except for himself. His raised right hand trembled wildly, but it always remained in front of him. Tony stood on the side and found that Strange's face became more and more ugly. Just as he was about to go up and ask what happened, Strange turned back. His face had turned pale at some point, and there were abnormal protrusions under his skin that were wriggling wildly. Without hesitation, Strange opened the portal and threw the others in, sending them directly to New York. As soon as he closed the portal, a bony arm penetrated his shield and pulled him out. He fell to the ground and looked up. A skeleton with flames was grinning at him. Strange smiled bitterly. You really don't let me rest. Bang! Another shield was propped up, and the skeleton's right fist hit it. The energy fluctuations spread out, and smoke and dust flew wildly in this broken room. Strange could feel the crazy rind of the dark worms in his body. He was originally in the Sanctum Sanctorum to expel these dangerous little things, but was attacked at a critical moment. When he woke up again, he was tied up by a group of dark witchcraft users. He finally managed to fight his way out, and just as he was about to open the portal to return to the Sanctum Sanctorum, he felt the terrifying dark magic, which was even more powerful than Shenyan's. So he immediately located Steve and the others and teleported over. But what he faced was such a mess. Strange sighed. The skeleton in front of him seemed to be completely unconscious. He just kept beating Strange's shield frantically. If necessary, he could keep playing with it, but now there were more urgent things to do. Strange's horse face showed a bitter smile. I hope you won't blame me, Frank, when you wake up. He put his hands together, and his powerful mental power burst out, forcing the skeleton back. The skeleton roared and immediately wanted to pounce on him and tear him apart, but found that his feet had been firmly frozen by the ice that appeared at some point. It opened and closed its jaws mockingly, and clicked a few times, as if mocking Strange's use of ice to deal with fire. It was full of fire, and broke free in the next second. But, 1 second was enough for Strange. The evil dark purple light of the inverted pentagram magic circle shone on his face. Strange drove the help portal expressionlessly and threw Frank in. After doing all this, he finally collapsed on the ground exhausted, wishing he could fall asleep immediately, but he couldn't, even though he hadn't had real sleep for 2 years. The poor wizard once again mobilized the little magic power left in his body to open a portal and walked in. Thank you all for your votes. Sorry for being late because of the New Year's Eve dinner. The next few chapters are still being coded. Not very soon. Chapter 110 Roadblock. At the top of Stark Tower. Strange. Steve wanted to rush back just after being thrown, but the portal had disappeared. He rushed to nothing. Tony walked to the window. It was pitch black outside. Even though he was on the top floor, he could hear screams. Jarvis' voice rang in his ears. Sir, welcome back. Help me locate Pepper's position and send a drone to take her to the underground shelter. Send over the special series of armor, codenamed Witchbuster. I remember that I should have done half of it before I left. Have you finished it? Yes, sir. It has been completed according to the design drawings you left behind. Do you need anything else? Tony turned his head and looked at the remaining 5 people. His eyes focused on the left hand of Bucky, who had been silent all the time, and pointed at him and said, urgently fine-tune 3 sets of armor that fit the body shapes of Steve, Clint and send them together. Use the Nano series. Equip them with weapons of maximum power. Mobilize the drones. Also equip them with weapons of maximum power, and transport them into the sky. I'm going to treat those bastards flying up there to a big meal. Also send out the search and rescue series of machines. Save as many people as you can, at any cost. He issued orders to Jarvis one by one, and the eye faithfully executed each of his orders, saying, Sir, the armor is expected to be in place in 5 minutes. Drones and search and rescue teams have been dispatched. In addition, Miss Pepper called you. Tony was silent for a while. He touched his bald head, and said, Ah, rejected. She called again. Continue to reject. She sent you a voice message. Do you want to listen to it? Play it. Then, Pepper's crying voice rang in his top-floor office. FXXXU, Tony Stark, you can't just run into space to be a hero, and then run back quietly, without saying a word to me, and let the robot take me to the shelter. Did you hear it? FXXXU. Tony realized that something was wrong when he heard half of it, and immediately changed the mode to let Jarvis play the sound into his headset. But it was too late. At least the F word with a crying tone was clearly heard by the other 5 people. Hawkeye and Sam laughed out loud on the spot. Rhodes looked up at the ceiling, pretending that he didn't want to laugh at all, but the twitching corners of his mouth betrayed him. Steve was even more straightforward. He turned his head directly. Bucky stood there with an expression of "What are you doing?" on his face. He covered his left hand and blinked his eyes. Tony had no choice but to listen to Pepper's emotional scream in the voice message, while mouthing "Who made your armor?" To Sam, not realizing that he was not on the phone at all. Hawkeye's laughter became more and more rampant. Hey, Tony, did you forget that you were not on the phone at all? Whether it was intentional or not, this little farce did somewhat adjust the depressing atmosphere. Tony's armor was delivered soon, and 3 meteors dragged flames behind them all the way to the helipad outside the office on the top floor of Stark Tower. 3 pure black armors stood there, just waiting for their users to come forward. Well, I would have introduced my work at this time, but time is running out. Brothers, put it on, and then follow Jarvis's command in all actions. We have to kill these bastards as soon as possible, he said murderously, and the helmet visor fell down, covering his bald head and face without eyebrows and beard. Rhodes whispered to Sam, to be honest, I think his new look is much better than before. Shenyan was shuttling between the stars. He had no interest in those magnificent and mysterious scenes, and even wanted to return to Earth immediately. He was eager to go home now. After dealing with the affairs of the creepy bull and the idiot woman who showed up halfway, he was already upset enough. Not to mention the whereabouts of the missing Angel Wings and Strange, and the dead Seth Beller mentioned Scythorn. The big demon Shadow was still one of the easy ones to talk to among the many ancient gods. Most of his believers offered sacrifices and prayed to him through the dark book. And get power. Normally, He had no interest in the human world and was considered a playboy among the crazy gods who regarded the earth as their backyard. But this time was unusual. The secrets that Seth Butler and the Supreme Wisdom were unwilling to tell made him feel a sense of crisis. He knew that he was strong, but not invincible. People who thought they were invincible usually died miserably. He knew that he would never be able to compete with Zisog, unless he was willing to use only 1/10 of his strength and allow Shenyan to use both hands. After eating those angels last time, he had some experience in how to digest huge amounts of energy. But it takes time. He ate hundreds of Star Destroyer cannon energy and the invincible star fleet of the Kree, not to mention their annihilation waves, antimatter bombs and other terrifying technological weapons. This also includes the huge energy from another ownerless dimension in the body of Carol, the idiot woman. Even though it consumed some of the energy after the Supreme Wisdom ascended to godhood, it still made him very full. The external manifestation is his eyes. The intensity of the red light in the mage's eyes was simply exaggerated, which was one of the proofs that he could not fully control the huge energy in his body at this time. The twinkling stars all over his body were also one of them. This power from the mysterious dimension was unbelievably docile, but there were too many of them. 10 million little white rabbits were placed in front of you. They would drown you alive. He exhaled gently, and for some reason, the sense of crisis in his heart became stronger and stronger. Just when he was about to use magic to forcibly open a portal across the sea of stars, an uninvited guest came in front of him. It was a huge planet. His huge body slowly turned, and a huge, old and strange face turned over. Shenyan frowned, and just when he was about to speak, the huge planet got ahead of him. "Hello, mage." His voice sounded calm and wise, but it was a pity that the madness inside that could not be concealed destroyed everything. The planet said, "I came for my son." "Who?" "My son, the best of the sons of Ego. He should have been part of my family, but was taken away. I sensed a hint of him in you." "Happy New Year, my dear brothers." Chapter 111. The Man Who Wakes Up from the Ruins. "If your son is a Kree, then we can start fighting right now," Shenyan said. "Kree? No, he's not." The giant planet named Ego thought for a while. Although the madness that Shenyan felt from his voice before was not fake, he was very calm and restrained at this time. He said slowly, "I understand. It was the work of the Supreme Wisdom. Thank you for avenging him, Master. I saw the end of the Kree." After saying this, he was about to leave. But Shenyan said, "Wait. What's the matter, Master?" Shenyan looked at Ego. He keenly felt that this living planet must know something, but he didn't have time to ask him now, so he had to say, "Nothing." Ego nodded. Considering his size and the fact that it was just a planet, this action should have seemed funny, but his old face diluted this feeling. The huge amount of energy opened a channel, and Ego disappeared in an instant. Before leaving, he did not forget to open his mouth wide and eat several asteroids floating beside him. The master put down the question and continued to move forward. Mark woke up from his coma. He touched his forehead. His fingers were sticky. He got closer and found that it was actually blood. Bleeding? He began to recall everything that had just happened. He rushed out of the house with his guitar. There were many people on the street. They walked together towards the city hall. The police also stood on the same line with them. Then what? What happened next? He thought carefully, but he didn't know how he was lying in the ruins. He touched his waist. The gun was still there. Mark was unusually calm at this time. He was lying in the ruins. His whole body was burning with pain, until a slight cry came from the right. A man shouted, "Hey, is anyone alive?" The cry ignored him, with childishness, like a child's voice. "Oh my God, damn, what happened? Hey, can anyone hear it?" Mark listened to the child's cry. He coughed twice, and a weak voice came out of his hoarse throat. "Here." Fortunately, the man was closer to him. He heard footsteps, and the bricks and tiles covering his head were dug up by a shovel. A man with a dusty face looked at him and said, "Dude, are you okay?" "I don't know, buddy, but you better leave me here first. I just heard a child crying." The man wiped his face, took a deep breath, and said, "Do you know which direction it came from?" "The right." "Okay, buddy, stay here for a while. I'll go find the child." He left, and Mark lay there. He moved his body with difficulty, tested his hands and feet, and confirmed that they were all there. He breathed a sigh of relief, but then thought of his guitar. Yes, my guitar. He turned his head and looked around, but didn't see the old guitar. Mark was neither sad nor happy. He showed an ugly smile on his face, which was overly aged by alcohol and drugs. No one knew what he was thinking. The man was still shouting loudly, and he seemed to hear the child crying, and he looked for it along the sound. Mark heard the sound of the shovel digging on the ruins, and the crying became clear all of a sudden. The man's voice came, "Oh my God, kid, where are your parents?" It's really weird. His footsteps and the child sobbing gradually approached, and Mark saw him again. The man bent down, and he leaned on the shovel in his hand and said, "It's a little girl, man. Things are really getting worse and worse." "Oh, let's not talk about that. Are you okay?" Mark said humorously. "I guess I may just lose my guitar, but everything is fine besides that." The man waved the shovel in his hand, and he shoveled away the fragments that were pressing on Mark one by one. "Oh, you are the guy who plays the guitar. I have to say, man, you play well." "Ha!" Mark laughed, and he coughed twice. He said, "Thank you for your compliment, but I haven't touched that thing for a long time." "Did you come out after watching TV?" "Yeah, man, we all did. I live with my 3 brothers and stayed at home. But, you know, Captain America called, so we came out. Who knew we would encounter this kind of thing?" The man's voice was calm. Mark was a little embarrassed. He didn't know how to continue the topic. Fortunately, the man took it up himself. "Didn't you see my brothers fall there? People in our family have always been lucky. My dad was shot 4 times and is still farming in the countryside. I believe they will be fine." "All right, man, come on, give me your hand." Mark raised his hand, and the man pulled him out of the rubble and supported him. Mark indicated that he could walk. He took a deep breath and saw the little girl lying on the ground beside him. She was no longer crying, but curiously sucking her fingers and looking at the 2 men in front of her. One had dark skin, wore glasses, and was covered in dust and dirt. The other was pot-bellied, old, ugly and bald, wearing an old pair of overalls. She suddenly laughed. The 2 looked at each other. Adults never understood what it was going on in children's minds. The man stretched out his hand and shook hands with Mark. His hands were strong. The man introduced himself. "Dave Albins." "Mark Rendell." They said their names to each other and then fell silent. Mark looked around. This place looked like a subway station. Not far away there was an overturned train that was emitting smoke and fire. The chandelier above the head was flickering strongly. Half of the station sign was missing, and only half was left on the supporting pillar. The girl stopped laughing again. She continued to suck her fingers. The sound of her touch was particularly clear. "So, what should we do now?" Dave said. "I don't know, man. I think we should keep looking to see if there are any other unlucky people here. As for this girl, let's take her with us." "I think so, man." Dave nodded. He handed the shovel in his hand to Mark, bent down and picked up the little girl, and asked softly, "Hey, little guy, what's your name?" She sucked her fingers, shook her blonde ponytail in a slurred and baby voice, and said with a smile, "Alice." "Okay, Alice, hello, my name is Dave." He's Mark." They began to walk on the ruins. "It's 5 updates as agreed, and there are 2 more to go. I'll write them for him later. I won't sleep today." Chapter 112 Battle. Tony Stark gritted his teeth as he was hit by a giant sword in the hands of a monster. Even though the armor on his body had very strong defensive power, it was declared scrapped by this blow. He flew out. The armor ejected him, and another set of armor that had been waiting on the ground for a long time flew up and wrapped him up. It was only an hour since the start of the battle, and he had already changed 15 sets of armor. There was no way. The combat intensity was too high, and they were too few. Tony took his drones and armor to guard Manhattan Island. Steve and Bucky were in Queens. Rhodes was also in Brooklyn with many drones. Hawkeye and Sam were in the Bronx. On the internal display of his visor, Jarvis hung a reminder for him on the right. There was a line of numbers on it, 75,013. Tony knew that those were the civilians rescued by the drones so far, but this was far from enough. How many people were there in New York? He didn't dare to think about this question, he just turned around to avoid a beam of light, and the energy cannon in his hand fired continuously in rapid-fire mode, and blue beams hit the huge monster with a black body, a full 4 meters tall, and white wings on its back. Even his skin was not broken, but Tony's original intention was just to delay it. So far, he has killed 3. This is the 4th one on Manhattan Island. Although they are powerful, they will not gather together, but kill separately. This may be the only good news. Tony dodged again and avoided the attack of the giant sword in the monster's hand. He kept waving around the monster's ears like a fly, attracting its attention. At the same time, the energy of the armor was rapidly decreasing, and the light of the nuclear reactor on his chest was getting brighter and brighter, until Jarvis reminded him, "Charging is complete, sir." Tony shouted, "Disengage." The armor suddenly opened and he fell from midair. The armor followed the previous trajectory and hit the monster's chest, which was also the energy core detected by Jarvis. The firelight instantly illuminated half of the sky. He killed another one, but Tony knew it was not over yet. Another set of armor flew over, and he finished dressing again. He was panting inside the armor, and his eyes swept over the miserable human corpses on the ruins on the ground. This always cynical playboy laughed instead of getting angry, and he said, "Jarvis, report the situation." Mr. Steve's right hand was broken, but his life was not in danger. Mr. Rod was very happy to kill, I have to say, sir. He uses weapons much better than you. At least he doesn't need the armor to explode to kill them. Mr. Clint is very adaptable to armor, and his results with Mr. Sam are amazing. What? How did they do it? Mr. Sam harassed and attracted attention. Mr. Clint used special energy arrows to hit their vital points with one arrow. Damn it, Tony said weakly while flying. He flew towards another monster. Dash. Right. Steve punched and shouted. His fist became more powerful after being blessed by Tony's armor. The armored punch hit the monster's left leg hard, causing it to lose balance for a short time while feeling pain. This is the 4th set of armor Steve has changed into, and it is also specially made. Tony's special armor is different from the one he usually wears. It is 3 meters high and completely black. His 2 fists can generate stronger power through energy amplification. He named this armor Steamroller. Steve doesn't know where his naming style comes from, but he prefers to call it Boxer. He is very good at this set of armor. He has good boxing skills and can restrain those monsters even without charging mode. If he uses charging mode, he can punch them to pieces. The monster lost its balance and fell to the ground. A shadow flashed by, and Bucky flew over in a bright silver streamlined armor. His left hand was not armored, and the 5 fingers flashing with cold light were stabbing at the core of the monster's chest at a high speed. The special speed armor on his body made him as elusive as an assassin. Once he appeared, it was a killing move. He passed through the chest. After a burst of explosions, the monster was blown to pieces. Wet black liquid and debris splashed everywhere. Steve said in the communication channel, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. How about you?" "Me too." "Okay. The next one is not far away." Their conversation was concise and full of trust in each other, and Bucky's empty, unarmored arm was actually intentional. They were inexperienced when facing the first one, and Bucky's armor was torn apart alive. Steve almost thought he was going to lose Bucky again. Who knew? His arm suddenly lit up red, and the sharp 5 fingers pierced into the monster's chest, and it exploded directly. Bucky looked shocked by this, but they didn't have time to study the arm. There were still many monsters to kill. After a short flight, the two soon saw 2 monsters, without weapons. Both of them were relatively short, with slender limbs, like beasts. Their entire heads could fly out like springs, and they could also extend long, sharp barbed tongues from their fanged mouths to select humans in the ruins to eat. Once extended, they would directly pierce them, and then bring them back and swallow them in one bite. It was like a buffet. Without any communication, Steve roared and rushed forward. The thrusters on the back of the armor exploded at full force. He bent down, charged his right fist, and punched the abominable monster on the left with a powerful thrust. This was not over yet. He rode on the monster, and 2 thrusters popped out from the elbows of both hands of the armor. The built-in fast-hitting mode allowed him to start beating the monster even faster. It made an unpleasant hissing sound, and the angel wings behind it fluttered, trying to fly up and get rid of this enemy. After detecting its movements, Jarvis immediately turned the thrusters on the back of the armor, and the reaction force pressed the monster to the ground, and it had no chance to escape. The other one saw the miserable state of its companion and immediately stuck its head out. Its tongue flew towards Steve in the air with mucus, but it was cut off by a silver light. Bucky put his left hand together, like a sharp blade, and cut off its tongue in one go. The moment it screamed in pain, he flew over, his left hand glowing red, and pierced through its chest with armor. A familiar explosion sounded behind him, and a piece of black tissue fell down and was stepped on by him. At this time, Steve just smashed the monster's head into a pulp. The two walked through the ruins in silence. Chapter 113 How to Use Advanced Language to Swear. After a while of deformation, Rhodes' leg armor pierced deeply into the ground, firmly ensuring that he would not fall down due to the strong recoil. He was holding a thick, big, black and hard object in his hand, and the 12 black muzzles were spinning rapidly. Yes, its prototype was the famous Gatling gun, but now it should be called a machine gun. This killer weapon designed by Jarvis was completely different from the meat grinder with a caliber of only 26,000 rounds per minute, and could only be used on a helicopter. Except for its appearance and concept, it did not fire live ammunition, but energy blocks. The power of each shot was comparable to a palm cannon in the maximum mode. Jarvis had not tested its firing rate, but after his calculations, the remaining energy in Rhodes' armor and its own energy should be enough for this monster to wield its firepower for 1 minute. In front of him, many self-destructing drones were crashing into a big guy. The guy was 7 meters tall, with muscles bulging all over his body. Although he was walking towards Rhodes, he was slowed down by the continuous explosions. Rhodes' face inside the helmet was covered with sweat. It was not because of fear, but because of excitement. He pressed the button, and the energy in the armor quickly lost power, and quickly supplied the killing weapon through the power supply port of the hand armor. The 12 muzzles rotated faster and faster, and it made a buzzing sound and began to tremble wildly. Rhodes immediately tightened the gun, and the armor's power output increased a bit. He held the handle tightly, and only then could he barely control its shaking. Its 12 muzzles began to emit dangerous blue light, and the buzzing sound became louder and louder, even becoming sharp and distorted. Rhodes pressed the button on the handle with a burst of laughter. At every dinner, banquet, and party after that, Rhodes would talk about this matter. He would throw out the first half with a mysterious smile, then slowly take a sip of red wine, sometimes champagne. Then he would suddenly restrain his expression and calmly say in a tone similar to Morgan Freeman, "Then, the rain of destruction came." He was right. The rain of destruction came. It was just a rain the size of bricks. Each of those energy blocks was the size of a brick, bombarding the monster with crazy kinetic energy and heat. It disappeared very slowly. It was like some videos that were played more than 10 times faster, about how ants and scavengers turned corpses into bones. Such videos usually have a speed of more than 10 times, and the monster was degraded just like the corpses in these videos. Its defense was very strong, but the density of energy blocks was unimaginable. They were denser than raindrops, and the speed, Rhodes didn't know how fast they were, but the speed and force of the vibration made him feel that it was more enjoyable than doing X. If possible, he would like to hold this gun and run to the shooting range every day to shoot for a minute. And he would even be willing to give up his morning masturbation for this. Although his legs were fixed in place, the powerful reaction force still took him back more than 10 meters. At the same time, energy bullets kept bombarding the monster. It was like a 3D print in reverse. It disappeared bit by bit from the head, and was hit by the energy bullets at a speed visible to the naked eye. Rhodes breathed weakly, his face twitched, and the smile on his face made him look like a black version of Forest Frost. He muttered to himself, almost in a dream, "I tell you, Jarvis, your talent in designing weapons is 100 times stronger than Tony. No, 10,000 times. I really want to marry this baby." Jarvis replied humorously, "Mr. Rhodes, the church in Las Vegas can satisfy your wish." In addition, Thank you for the compliment. Shenyan floated above the earth. If there were levels for gloomy faces, his current level should have exceeded the upper limit. He wanted to curse and say some dirty words to relieve his emotions. Although we all know that swearing can't change anything, but sometimes, you have to say some dirty words. Comma, 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 colon. This damn bastard wants you to find his dark book first, then follow the rituals written on it completely, and then he will be willing to talk to you for 5 minutes. But this time, he was too lazy to do those complicated rituals. He floated above the earth, and the red light in his eyes seemed like 2 balls of scarlet flames that never went out, burning continuously. He opened his hands, and a huge amount of magic power soon surged out of his body, forming a large area of red and golden light behind him. Even a storm formed in the universe, sweeping the surrounding rubble and the wreckage of the warships left behind, attracting them to wrap around the mage, and then being crushed into powder by the violent magic power. The mage uttered a long string of obscure and meaningless sentences from his mouth. They were of different lengths, but only one word was mentioned many times. Thon. Zysong. Shenyan spoke an ancient language, before Zysong became a dimensional demon. He was one of the earliest life forms on Earth and a typical demon. Billions of years ago, the natural vitality of the biosphere on Earth gave birth to a group of elder gods, who then began to kill and devour each other, and some even turned into demons, including Zysong. The language Shenyan just spoke was the most ancient demon language. If you have to translate it, and to be more straightforward, the long sentence he just read actually only has 8 words when translated. Zysong, fuck your mother. It's 3 o'clock and I finally finished writing. I said I would update 5 more chapters and I felt my body was hollowed out. Chapter 114. Thorn. Hey, don't be so irritable, a male voice said behind him. The wizard turned his head and saw a man with white hair and red robes floating behind him. The man spread his hands and said in a helpless tone, I know you should be very angry now. After all, when we met last time, I said that I would not do such a thing again. But this time it really has nothing to do with me. The wizard didn't say anything. He pointed to the dark magic covering the entire earth, which was exactly the same as the magic on Zysong. Well, maybe these magics do come from me, but this matter really has nothing to do with me. I know. Shenyan nodded and said, I just want you to come out. Zysong breathed a sigh of relief. He was not afraid of the wizard, but he was afraid that the wizard would expel his medium in the human world, the dark divine book that had existed as long as human history. If that happened, he would not be able to see fresh fun for quite a while. That thing was like a TV satellite to him. When he stayed in his own dimension and had nothing to do, he liked to watch reality shows through it. He likes to read about evil wizards who attempt to rule the world through the dark book, and about people who accidentally pick up this book and end up destroying their families because of the evil spells on it. Who borrowed your magic power? Zythorn immediately frowned. Ah, you know this. I am a person with a strong sense of contract. Although they are not my believers, and they believe in a disgusting old woman, I still can't tell you who they are. I understand. Shenyan nodded. Do you know where they are now? Oh my god, how can you ask such a question? Do you think I will really tell you that they are in New York now? Impossible. Zythorn said righteously. Shenyan looked at the Hades with an indescribable look. He sighed and said, I won't expel your TV broadcast interface. As long as you abide by our contract, everything will be fine. Of course, I abide by the contract the most. Shenyan nodded expressionlessly. He pointed to the dark magic covering the earth. Zythorn immediately frowned. Although they are not my believers, I have made a contract with them after all. The magic power has been lent out. If I take it back, wouldn't I be a person who doesn't keep my word? Come on, Zythorn. The contract between you and I also requires you to delete the large-scale evil spells in the dark book. Have you done it? I added 5 pages of danger warnings and a short disclaimer in the front. If they have the patience to read the preface, they will know the danger of this book. What's more, the dark book will only look for those with evil intentions. What I'm doing is also revealing those evil people to you in advance, isn't it? Stop quibbling. Take back your magic power immediately. Also, you have to explain to me why the wings of those birdmen in heaven are inserted into your magic creations." Scythorn waved his hand, and the huge dark magic immediately disappeared without a trace. The man continued, "About this. You have to ask other people. This matter has nothing to do with me. After all, even if they are my creations, they cannot enter the human world without a ticket. In addition, I like what you did to the Kree people. Maybe one day in the future you will stand on our side. I will prepare a place for you. What kind of throne do you like, black or red? I recommend red." He began to chatter. The wizard interrupted his soliloquy. "I have no intention of losing my humanity for the time being. You will sooner or later, my friend." Scythorn smiled mysteriously, and said, "From ancient times to the present, all wizards cannot avoid this path, including your teacher. Sooner or later, we will become indifferent and heartless because of something. If we are lucky, we will be like me, with a sense of humor. If we are like others." He let out a meaningless low laugh. The wizard looked at him expressionlessly as he easily tore the dimension and disappeared. He whispered, "If I really want to become like you, I'd rather die." After that, he also opened a portal. Mark leaned against the wall uneasily, holding Alice in his arms. The poor girl had fallen asleep, and she seemed to have no idea what kind of environment she was in. David leaned against his side, holding the shovel in his arms, and his arms couldn't stop shaking. Damn it, man, did you see that thing just now?" Even his voice was trembling. "I saw it." Mark swallowed a mouthful of saliva. They walked up from the ruins of the subway station little by little, and finally saw the exit. After using a shovel to remove the debris blocking the exit, they saw a huge monster covered in black standing not far away with its back to them, holding a handful of humans in its hands, tearing them into pieces and swallowing them alive like eating French fries. Mark immediately covered Alice's eyes, and he and David immediately turned around and ran back to the subway station. Not long after, Alice fell asleep. Mark guessed that it was because she was tired of crying before. "It's behind." David took off his glasses, put them in his hands and rubbed them unconsciously. "Its wings." David seemed to stutter suddenly, his words were unclear and hesitant, and Mark knew what he wanted to say. "The pair of white wings." "Hey, man, listen, whatever it is, it has nothing to do with angels, okay? The Bible doesn't say that angels eat people." "You have to cheer up. We have a child with us." Mark's words made David look at Alice. The child was still sleeping peacefully, and she knew nothing about the dangers in the outside world. David smiled bitterly. "You're right, Mark, but I was a devout Christian before I saw the thing." "Really? The kind that goes to church every day?" "Almost all of our family are Christians. I remember when I was a child, whenever I made a mistake, my mother would scare me with the Bible. She didn't beat me, but she would punish me by making me watch those scary clips. I was often scared to death." "Then you're really miserable, man. My mother just chased me in the cornfield with a stick. She didn't run as fast as me, so I didn't get beaten." The two chatted, as if they had forgotten the monster above their heads and their situation. Chapter 115. The mastermind behind this. Strange was staying in the messy sanctum sanctorum. Special incense was lit at the door. The ceiling and walls were painted with various complex magic circles, the largest of which was painted under him. He sat cross-legged, his body floating. He looked like he was enduring great pain, with a distorted expression, frowning eyebrows, and a low groan in his throat. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and fell to the ground, his throat bulging high, and with a disgusting vomiting sound, he vomited a large number of insects. They were all black, covered with disgusting mucus, and many of them even had Strange's internal organs and blood hanging on them. At this time, they were twisting their bodies and crawling towards Strange, trying to return to his body to continue to devour magic. Strange stood up weakly, and he used the hell portal he prepared in advance to send these damn insects back, letting them go back to harm the demons. He himself lay there, not wanting to move at all. The combination of fatigue and pain turned into some kind of poison that eats human marrow, spreading its toxicity in his body. For a while, Strange wished he could die immediately. He was too tired, but he couldn't do it now. He groaned, forced himself to open his eyes, stained his fingers with some blood, and drew a magic circle on the ground. To be honest, he was very bad at drawing. After all, he was already unconscious, and it was a miracle that he could still move now. Therefore, the magic circles he drew looked like ghostly talismans, and they couldn't even form a perfect circle. A hand patted him, and a familiar voice said, "You should go and rest first." Strange didn't open his eyes. He knew who was talking. He said weakly, "Scythoan is Scythoan. We must stop him. He violated the contract." He seemed to want to say something else, but he had already fainted. Shenyan was about to throw a few healing spells at him, but realized that in his current state, the energy released might directly suffocate Strange to death. He simply summoned soil and grass, mixed with the blood left by Strange, and drew an ancient primitive magic circle around him. This is the magic of the shamans. In ancient times, they used this method to communicate the magic in the air and borrow the essence of the earth to heal people. The effect cannot be said to be very good, but it is enough for Strange's current physical condition. He threw down about 20 protective spells, from white magic to black magic, from witchcraft to shamanism. This place can now be said to be the safest place on earth. After doing all this, he walked out. Shenyan stood outside the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York. He could smell the smell of blood and hear people crying and screaming. After Zythorn withdrew his magic, the sky was no longer dark, but it was still overcast. His creations still affect the weather in this city. The souls of those innocent people who died floated above the city. In the wizard's vision, the sky was full of dead people hanging upside down. His eyes swept over each of their faces, and then he took a deep breath. As he breathed, the creatures of Scython that were wreaking havoc in the city suddenly stopped. Their bodies trembled and shattered into pieces of flying ash. The black fragments flew above the city and flew in a certain direction. The wizard floated up and followed the direction of the fragments all the way out of the city. Scython's creatures were expelled by him, and they would turn into magic and return to the Dark Book. Therefore, as long as he followed them, he could find the holder of the Dark Book. Then the wizard laughed. He could actually find these people at the beginning, but he didn't do that. The fundamental reason was to let them know one thing: "I'm here to find you." He didn't hide his figure. The red and black magic flashed with a hint of gold, passing through the dark sky and illuminating the entire city. From where he passed, the collapsed buildings and collapsed roads began to return to their original state. As long as the people who are not dead still have a breath, they will not die again. Outside New York City, two men were fleeing frantically in a car. One of them was holding an unremarkable black book. "Drive faster, faster." "Damn it, if we are caught by that evil demon, we will not be able to return to him after we die." "I know, how can he come back so quickly? Didn't the high priest say that he would be delayed for a long time? We also specially sacrificed 100 people to cover his perception." "Damn false god, his magic has no effect at all. It just looks intimidating." "You really have no respect for Zyson. His magic is actually quite useful, and his power is much stronger than the one you believe in." A voice suddenly sounded in the car. The man driving the car had his hair standing up. He immediately raised his head and saw a young man sitting in their back seat in the rear-view mirror, with a calm face. He did not hesitate at all and immediately planned to bite the poison that had been placed under his tongue to commit suicide. His companions thought so too, but their lives no longer belonged to them the moment Shenyan found them. The car slowly stopped. The wizard opened the car door. He got out, and stood with his back to the car. Behind him, the two men also got out of the car, and knelt down with their backs to him in horror. "Do you know how many people died in the city just now?" He turned around and untied one of them, who immediately started cursing. "How many pagans deserve to die? And you, evil, all his enemies will eventually die. You will be burned by the flames in his hell for 10,000 years. Ignoring him, Shenyan looked at the other one and untied him as well. The man driving the car said nothing, and his whole body was trembling. Obviously, he had heard of Shenyan's style. The wizard smiled. "Have you heard of me? Do you know what the fate of believing in evil gods on earth is? I really find it strange. Why can't you be killed? You always emerge from all the dark corners. I remember that I clearly killed all of you. Also, the high priest you mentioned. Are you interested in talking to me? Don't even think about it. Evil demon, I won't tell you. The wizard shrugged. He sealed the mouths of the two men and asked them to kneel down. He said, I was just teasing you. I've just reviewed your memory. Are you surprised? He turned to another person and said, do you know how I treat the followers of the evil gods? Want to see it with your own eyes? These 2 chapters are actually just transition chapters. Let's see if we can finish this volume this week. Writing 10,000 words a day is too much. It feels like a warm-up. I finish it just when I feel like it. It's not satisfying. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, The Missing Piece. The two did not speak. They expressed their resistance to the evil demon in front of them with their resolute eyes. Shenyan actually did not care that much. He snapped his fingers. The man driving the car floated up. His lower body began to split inch by inch as the wizard stared at him, as if an invisible knife cut his body, but strangely, no blood flowed out. He could not scream, and could only watch his body being cut open bit by bit and neatly arranged in the air. The pain made him faint instantly, but he was awakened by the wizard's magic. He turned his head and looked at the man holding the book. He knelt on the ground, his body shaking wildly uncontrollably. The scene in front of him further confirmed his perception that the wizard was an evil demon. His faith in him did not decrease in the slightest, but his fear of the wizard was increasing crazily. How firm is your faith in your god? Look, you can kill people for him. Come to a strange city, and let thousands of innocent people who have nothing to do with you die. Let the city collapse, and even want to turn their souls into curses, turning the city into a purgatory for living beings. I'm curious, why can you do the same as aliens? The man didn't speak, or maybe he wanted to say something. After all, the left half of his body was crumbling bit by bit, turning into the lowest dust. But the wizard didn't unlock the magic seal on his mouth. He could only make a scream in his throat that only he could hear. Shenyan sighed, and the dark book on the ground flew up and floated behind him. He planned to deal with the book later. As for now, he had more important things to do. Under normal circumstances, he would not look through people's memories at will, even if it was just a matter of moving his fingers, but there was still a bottom line. But these two people no longer regarded themselves as human beings, so he didn't need to abide by the rules he set for himself. From their memories, the wizard saw the whole process of the matter. This group of lingering evil god believers had met Shenyan once before. At that time, their headquarters was in Europe, and they were encountered by the mage who had just debuted. And the followers of the evil gods, what they did, even the demons in hell would applaud. He had detected the fluctuations of dark magic, and when he went to investigate, he saw those anti-human scenes, and in a rage, he killed them all in one breath. And only 2 or 3 kittens escaped. Although they were tracked down later, they seemed to have disappeared from the earth, and no trace could be found no matter what. Now it seems that they may not have really been on the earth at that time. When they learned that Shenyan had left, they immediately started the revenge plan. Contact with aliens and Sith Builders, contact with dark witchcraft were all part of their plan. Shenyan suddenly felt ridiculous. A huge empire spanning the Star Sea was destroyed because of the revenge plan of this group of scum. But there is another question. Why New York? The wizard turned around, and the 2 men behind him turned into ashes in an instant. At the same time, thunderclouds began to roll in the sky. The 2 dust balls slowly flew up to the sky, and a lightning bolt struck the dust, and half of the sky suddenly became as bright as day. Through the tempering of thunder and lightning, they turned into a dark and heavy sword of dust. From time to time, a flash of lightning flashed on the gray sword, and 2 screaming and distorted faces appeared on it from time to time. The wizard made a simple gesture, and this special sword flew out. The souls of the 2 men screamed in it. The lightning would make their souls suffer forever, and his magic power would make them unable to die or restore their original bodies. The sword flew over New York, over the sea, and all the way to the jungle of South America on the other side of the earth. An old man was nailed to the ground by the sword in an instant. From its chest, A strange charred black spread all the way to the land around it. The stench could not stop emanating from its body, and black sticky substances flowed out of the old man's mouth and nose. It wanted to say something, but the next moment it opened its mouth. A pure black magic blade flew over and cut off its tongue. Another flash of lightning struck, and a man slowly walked out of the darkness and stood opposite him. No one knew when he appeared. He stood there, and the red light in his eyes overflowed from his eye sockets, even illuminating the jungle. Belief in evil gods, collusion with aliens, sacrifice, cannibalism. You don't know until you see it. The sins in your soul are so outrageous that it's simply outrageous, the wizard said, and suddenly felt bored. He knew a long time ago that the followers of the evil gods could not be killed. These people with evil thoughts were a perfect match for them. Not everyone has the courage to isolate the dark side of their hearts and choose to be a normal person instead. Some people just like the pleasure of falling into darkness completely. They are ruthless to their own kind. They regard themselves as servants of a higher class and creatures higher than humans. Among the various opinions of the wizards and the mystical world, there is one that is most recognized. No one who believes in evil gods is innocent, because if a person wants to become a believer of evil gods, he can only embrace darkness completely, and there will not be a trace of good thoughts in his heart. When they accept the whispers from the other side of the starry sky, they have already become them. Shenyan was not interested in talking to it. He made a gesture again, and the sword exploded in the old man's chest. Its body was blown into pieces. There was no blood, only some sticky black objects splashed on the ground. He clenched his right hand, and a whole piece of soil on the ground began to shake. They slowly flew up, and condensed into a sphere in the air with the fragments of this still living abominable creature. The old man's head was in the middle of the sphere. The wizard walked in slowly, and he began to read its memory. Miserable childhood, living by stealing on the street, encountering war, forced to eat people. By chance, he found a human skin book that recorded evil magic, and then completely became a believer of the evil god. In the past 50 years, it has held hundreds of cannibal banquets of all sizes in Northern Europe. It even wrote a book to evaluate the quality of human flesh of people of all ages. Shenyan glanced at it, smiled kindly, and then continued to read. The temptation of immortality allowed its sect to quickly obtain financial assistance and develop very quickly, until it met the wizard. Its painstaking development was destroyed, and even the flesh it used was forced to abandon. It could only parasitize on the bodies of insects and escape all the way to South America, where it borrowed dark witchcraft to start developing secretly, until it thought the time was right. It could start its revenge plan. Shenyan read it again, omitting those disgusting scenes, and he still didn't find out why this beast chose New York as the location. It was as if someone had erased this part from his memory, and there was no memory of how he got the dark book and the angel's wings. Chapter 117 Temporary End. Who did you make a deal with? Shenyan narrowed his eyes. In this case, it can only be that a more powerful wizard or something has erased this part of its memory. Even in its soul, there is no evidence of the existence of these things. Those things are like the most critical piece of a puzzle, but they were stolen and thrown into the sewer, and they can never be found again. The old man's head embedded in the mud ball smiled at him mockingly, and his grinning mouth was empty, without teeth or tongue, only pure black. Alas, Shenyan sighed. He knew that there was no point in torturing it. Even if he made it suffer so much, he couldn't bring back the dead, and it wouldn't tell him the truth. But he just wanted to do it. It began to scream, and the red light in the wizard's eyes spread to even illuminate the entire jungle, and a smile of satisfaction appeared at the corner of his mouth that he didn't even notice. Another dimension. Zisong sat on his red throne. There was nothing in this dimension, only him. In the endless years in the past, he has always been like this, sitting on the throne, watching everything that happened in the world in the darkness with cold eyes. He made a laugh that only he could hear. At this moment, he smiled as he watched the images sent back by the dark book, especially when Shenyan tortured the soul of the evil god's believer. The smile on his face was even brighter than before. He said to his side, "You are really cold-blooded, Ancient One. You even calculated your own disciples like this. You call yourself the guardian of the earth, But you let these filthy things wantonly slaughter the people you swore to protect. In the void where there was nothing, a woman in a yellow robe appeared. There was no sadness or joy on her face. She said, "This is all necessary. Zai-san, you won't understand." "Yes, I really don't understand why you didn't tell him the truth, and even joined hands with his enemies to deceive him. If I could understand this, then I might be the Supreme Sorcerer." Zai-san nodded, and he laughed wantonly, and the laughter echoed in the Stark dimension and also echoed in the ears of Ancient One. "But I know that you are a hypocritical person, and this has never changed, Ancient One," he continued sarcastically. "You planned the escape of the High Priest, right? How many years ago have you been playing this game? Ha! You watched it kill so many people and did nothing? How hypocritical. And they still call me the God of Darkness." "Honestly, my friend, if you want, I can give you this title immediately." Zythorn stood up, his white hair fluttering behind his head. The man made a funny bow and motioned for Ancient One to sit on his scarlet throne. "What do you know?" Ancient One seemed to be unconcerned by his ridicule and the sharp truths that he spoke. She just said lightly, "I want to maintain his humanity. He wants to find his original world. This may never happen." Looking for a special grain of sand in a desert? When he really finds that special grain of sand, he may have become something more terrifying than you and me. And the earth must have a guardian. I can't let him leave. As long as he still has doubts about this matter in his heart, then he will definitely come back to check after a while. As long as it's like this, it's enough. That doesn't make sense. There is nothing in this universe that can threaten the development of the earth, and the road to the parallel universe has been blocked by you. Even you in other universes can't come here. You are the most powerful individual among the many Ancient Ones. Zythorn shook his head. The smile on his face suddenly disappeared, and the god of the underworld said calmly, "There must be other reasons. Ancient One, let me be frank. This is the first time I feel sick about you in all the years we have known each other. Even in the past, I have seen how you play tricks more than once, but never like today. You don't just make me sick, you make me feel scared. If the earth is really so important in your heart, then why did you leave?" Ancient One smiled. "Look, Zai-san, the earth is important in our hearts, but the way I love her is more special." After that, she left. Zai-san sat on the throne, his right hand supporting his head. No one knew what he was thinking. For a long time, the dark god looked at the profile of Shenyan in the picture, and suddenly smiled with pity. However, he didn't know who he was laughing at. The monsters disappeared, the streets were clean and new, and the collapsed buildings were restored to their original state. Mark stood on the street. If he didn't feel pain all over his body, he might think that the experience of the past few hours was just a dream, and it was proof that he was high again. David stood beside him. He pulled out a cross from his chest, stared at it and said, "You know what, man, I used to just use my faith in the Lord as a tool to calm myself, but now I think he really might exist." Mark held the sleeping Alice in his arms. He seemed a little absent-minded. "Maybe." They fell silent. There were people in groups of 3 or 4 on the street. They were sitting, standing or lying. They were all uninjured. The seriously injured had been taken away by drones with the Stark Company logo. Mark looked up at the sky. The sun was setting. The sky at dusk was a little pink in the dark blue. He knew that was the sun's good night. "Good night," Mark muttered to himself. Alice in his arms woke up. She stretched and Mark quickly put her down. This little girl seemed to have no idea what fear and sorrow were. She just stood there. Mark's mood suddenly calmed down. At least I'm still alive. He thought of the pistol on his waist and took it out. David stood by with his eyes wide open. "Damn, man, you still have a gun on you?" Mark smiled. He ejected the magazine, took out the last remaining bullet, held it in his palm, looked at the sky and said softly, "Yes, buddy, but I don't want to see a gun again in my life. I want to go back to my hometown. Back to Kansas." "That's great. You are from Kansas?" "Yes. Ha, I played guitar much better when I was young than I do now. Alas, I shouldn't have come to New York." Their chat made Alice turn her head away bored. She looked around and saw a familiar man and woman sitting on the ground at the corner of the street. The woman covered her face and cried in the man's arms. Alice's face bloomed with a smile again. innocent and bright. She ran over with a smile. 5 more tomorrow. Chapter 118 Achievement. Giving the middle finger in front of the national live broadcast. New York at night. The damage caused by the monsters has been restored, and even the power lines have been repaired. Invisibly, the city government has saved a lot of money, but the dead can't come back. The major hospitals in New York have long been overcrowded, but there are not enough doctors and nurses. There is no way. Tony can only let the production line in his factory continue to expedite the production of drones. At the same time, he slightly modified his drones used for combat and used them as nurses. The search and rescue series of drones he developed saved many lives in this sudden disaster, but he didn't seem very happy about it. Tony Stark sat on the top of his building. He didn't wear a helmet. He looked at the night in front of him and touched his bald head in silence. Rhodes sat next to him, and the two men were sharing a Burger King meal. Tony picked up the double cheeseburger that he had put aside and was almost cold, and took a big bite. "Sir, Ms. Pepper is downstairs." Jarvis's voice came from his helmet that he put aside. After hearing it, Rhodes looked at him, jumped down with a gloating smirk and flew away. Tony was silent. He ate his burger bite by bite until the sound of high heels behind him got closer and closer. He stood up, turned his back to Pepper and said to her in a somewhat overwhelmed manner, "Hey, listen, Pepper." The woman interrupted him, put her hands around his cold metal armor and hugged him. Tony lowered his head and saw that the clasped hands had turned white because of the excessive force. The armor on his hands was removed. He patted Pepper's cold hands, turned around, pulled her close to his arms, and kissed her gently. It should have been a beautiful scene, but he let out a cry of pain. Pepper broke free from his arms, stepped back a few steps, and pulled her hair. As the night fell, Tony couldn't see her face, but there was a smile in her voice. "Who told you to stick out your tongue, Tony Stark? I haven't forgiven you yet." "Hey, baby, number. This is just a normal physiological reaction. You see, I was locked up in outer space by those damn blue aliens for so long." He covered his mouth and spoke incoherently. Pepper finally couldn't help it. She laughed out loud, walked closer, and gave Tony another hug. Tony hugged her silently, and could feel her trembling and the tears dripping on his hands. He said softly, "It's great to see you, Virginia Pepper Potts." In front of the New York City Police Department, a large group of reporters surrounded this place with their long guns and short guns, and the TV station's live broadcast truck surrounded this place. But there was only one person standing on the podium in front of the police station. He was wearing a blood-stained blue police uniform shirt, his right hand hanging in front of his chest, wrapped in white cloth. Soon someone recognized him. It was the commissioner of the New York City Police Department, George Stacy. When all the reporters sat down at the prepared stools, Chief Stacy tapped the microphone. He opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. He just took off his police hat with his left hand, revealing his gray hair. The old man, who had been a policeman all his life, took a deep breath and said hoarsely, "I want to apologize to all those who lost their families in this disaster. The night should have protected you, but we were attacked right after the disaster and we couldn't spare any manpower. In the past few hours, more than 40% of the police have died in the line of duty." He was silent for a while before continuing, "After tonight, I will resign." Before the reporters could digest the news he had said, Stacy continued, "But before that, I have a question I must ask federal officials. Why haven't we seen any support from the beginning of the disaster until now? As far as I know, there are 3 garrisons near New York, and it doesn't take them 40 minutes to drive here. Now, New York City hospitals are overcrowded, and most doctors are treating patients with injuries. We are experiencing a shortage of medical supplies, a shortage of staff, and even medical workers are patients themselves, and the federal government still hasn't given us any assistance. I want to ask, is New York no longer considered part of the Federation in their eyes?" After saying this, he closed his mouth. Standing there like a silent statue, the flashes and video cameras of various cameras were shooting at his face, and the angry expression on the old man's face was clearly visible. "I also have a question for the federal government," another man shouted loudly from the audience. He was wearing a dusty suit, messy hair, and blood on his forehead. He limped to the podium and said, I am the current mayor of New York City, Hobson Harlan." The flashlights flashed even more crazily. Hobson and director Stacy looked at each other, and he nodded. Then he held a microphone and said, "I want to ask a question to the federal government here. Please listen carefully. Everyone who is watching this live broadcast on TV, I am not asking this question as the mayor, I am asking this question as a citizen of New York City, a citizen of the United States. Why was there no support at the first moment of the disaster? Isn't our annual military expenditure the highest in the world? We have so many troops, firing bullets abroad all day long, and now we need support at home and we don't get any help at all? This is my first question. The second question is, why is there no material assistance until now? I haven't seen any supporting doctors, no disaster relief supplies, and not even a White House spokesperson coming out to say that we will make a decision on this as soon as possible." He gave the camera a big middle finger. "I've been calling people in the Washington office since the moment the disaster began, you bastards. I've made no less than 20 calls. You didn't answer any of them, son of the beach." As if he was not satisfied, he simply hammered the podium hard, and the recoil force made the microphone buzz. Hobson roared, and later someone counted the number. In his 15-minute speech, he used more than 120 slang words listed in the Oxford Dictionary to curse the incompetence and corruption of the federal government in front of the national audience. At the end of his speech, he said something that almost drove the reporters present crazy. "If the federal government does not intend to lend us a hand, then we will no longer pay taxes and other responsibilities. I will contact the governor and initiate a vote in the state." Hundreds of years ago, we joined this federation one by one and became a part of it. But now, it has become what we ideally wanted. So, we apply to secede from the federation. Chapter 119 The Sudden Troublemaker. This is going to be fun. Clint was sitting in a pizza shop, and the owner disappeared. He said incoherently while chewing a pizza. Sam sat next to him, frowning and watching the TV, and said, "I admire his courage, but after saying these things, he may not have a good ending." The owner disappeared. They were uninvited guests, and Sam showed Clint his cooking skills that he had practiced at home out of boredom. His pizza was really good. Clint shrugged, grabbed a Diet Coke beside him and took a big gulp, and burped comfortably and without image. "Honestly, Sam, I wouldn't be surprised if he committed suicide at home tomorrow. I bet on the day after tomorrow." Sam glanced at him, took out a $100 bill from his pocket, and the face of Benjamin Franklin was printed on it. He pretended to be in deep thought. Clint thought for a while, shook his head and said, "No." "Are you scared?" "No means I want to raise the stakes." Clint chuckled and said, "We forgot about the director. He's a man, but those bastards don't care whether he's a good guy or a tough guy. I'll add $200 as chips. Bet he will be assassinated tomorrow." Sam looked at him, then at the money, gritted his teeth and took out 50, and said, "Okay, this is my last money." "Are you so poor?" Clint asked, puzzled. Sam looked at him and pointed at his face. "Retired, no job." "Why do you think I can be rich? Not everyone has a pension like you." "Ah, forget it. I don't make money from poor people. It's boring." Clint waved his hand uninterestedly, took out Sam's money and gave it back to him. But Sam didn't take it. He stared at him. "What do you mean? Do you think I will definitely lose? I tell you, although I am poor, I am very lucky in betting." He kept talking about how great his luck was, such as going to Las Vegas with only $5 and winning $3,000 in one night. Clint perfunctorily answered him and threw a handful of broken bills on the table as meal money. He grabbed the bow and arrow and walked out the door, saying to Sam, "It's not that I think you will lose, Sam, but you have already lost." "What?" Hawkeye pointed to a black car that had just driven past the door. He said calmly, "They are really fast." Sam glanced at him and they ran out of the store. The wings on Sam's back spread out, and he pulled Hawkeye up into the sky. He asked, "How sure are you?" 80%. "I know their car." "Don't make a mistake, Clint. How long have you been away?" "Are you questioning an agent's intuition?" "No, I simply don't think you have the ability." "Humphrey," Hawkeye snorted coldly, and motioned Sam to put him on the rooftop of a nearby building. from where he could directly see the crowd gathered in front of the police station and Chief Stacy, who was answering reporters' questions. Hawkeye squatted on the rooftop, squinting his eyes and observing the surrounding environment. Sam flew into the sky again and began to provide him with reconnaissance. As much as I hate to admit it, you seem to be right, Clint. Sam's mixed voice came from the headset. Hawkeye frowned and asked, "What did you see?" "There are 4 action teams rushing here." "Damn it, they didn't move when the disaster happened, but they were amazingly fast when catching their own people." "I'm used to it." Hawkeye turned his head and shot an arrow at an oncoming SUV on the road as if he had predicted it. The arrow flew quietly in the dark night, from his bow to the driver's head. "The first one is solved." "What about the others?" "Look to your right. The traffic light on the second block. A black SUV. There should be 4 people on it." "It's a small matter." Hawkeye calmly bent his bow and arrow again. He was used to killing. As long as he got into the state, nothing could disturb him. "Not bad, old man. Your archery skills haven't deteriorated." Seeing his achievements, Sam praised in the headset, and then said, "The other 2 must have found something wrong, so they stopped the car." "Let me see." "Damn, they have sniper rifles and found me," he said hurriedly in the headset, and Hawkeye heard the loud gunshots and the sound of bullets in the headset. "That shot was very close to you." Very close. "These bastards." Sam gritted his teeth and stopped talking. Hawkeye saw his wings shining silver in the night, and he dived straight down and pounced on the bastard who shot at him. He rose up in the air and protected his body with bullets. Those bullets shot on his wings, making a tinkling sound, but none of them really hit his body. Hawkeye heard him roar in the headset, "Eat shit, you bastards." He was not interested in seeing their bodies. The power of Sam's 2 pulse pistols could make a hole in a thick building, let alone a human body. Even wearing a bulletproof vest would be useless. After all, it was Stark Enterprises technology. At this moment, the crowd gathered in front of the police station noticed the abnormality and the gunshots. Hawkeye was not surprised to see them running around and the screams that resounded through the clouds. The experienced agent stood up straight, took out the grappling gun at his waist, and swung to the opposite building. He planned to protect Hobson and Stacy after getting close. If these 2 people died here, New York might really become independent tomorrow. It would be fun at that time. Even if he didn't have much affection for the federal government now, he didn't want to see a war. At that time, all the people who died were civilians. He ran on the roof, but heard the sound of breaking air in his ears. Hawkeye's pupils shrank sharply, and he rolled over, and the attacker landed lightly on the ground where he had just stood. He bent his bow and put an arrow on it and looked back, and saw 2 people in strange clothes standing facing him. One was wearing a red and blue tights with spiderweb-like patterns as embellishments, large white goggles, and even a spider logo on the chest. The body curves of the other one looked like a woman. She was wearing a hood, the same white goggles, and a tights with pink, white and black interlaced, which made her look particularly beautiful. However, Hawkeye didn't care at all. His arm didn't tremble at all, and he loosened his fingers, and shot an arrow immediately towards the spider head wearing red and blue tights. But what he didn't expect was that the guy didn't move, and stretched out his hand in advance as if he had predicted the future, and grabbed his arrow. "Who are you?" Hawkeye asked sternly. Chapter 120 Brawl. "Wow, man, you don't know me?" The guy looked very surprised. He dropped the arrow in his hand, put his hands on his waist and said loudly, "You don't know me?" "I am." Hawkeye was not interested in listening to him. In his opinion, this kind of guy who likes to chatter is not much different from an idiot. The arrow thrown by Spiderweb head floated up from the ground in an instant along with the movement of his fingers and shot towards the back of Spiderweb head. But this time, it still failed. Spiderhead jumped up easily, did a graceful roll in the air and landed beautifully. He stood up and shook his finger at Hawkeye. "Hey, man, it's really rude to interrupt others when they are talking." Hawkeye caught the arrow flying towards him and re-reeled his bow. Behind him, Sam fell from the sky and asked vigilantly, "Who are these 2 guys?" "I don't know, they just attacked me." "Then it has something to do with them." Sam showed the pulse pistol in his hand. "You'd better surrender obediently." Before he could finish his words, The pink-hooded head who had been silent beside him shot out something like a line from his hand, snatched his pulse pistol and held it in his hand. "Well, this thing looks good, big guy. It's a pity that they are mine now." The pink goggles on the pink-hooded head's mask narrowed, as if smiling, and she pointed the gun at Sam and Hawkeye. "Well, it looks like we are in trouble," Sam whispered to Hawkeye. "It's all your idiotic questions." "Hey, I didn't know she could do that either." "Yeah, that just shows that your observation skills are not as good as mine." "What? No, how come? How does that mean that my observation skills are not as good as yours?" Spiderhead scratched his head, and he turned his head and asked, So they had a quarrel?" "Probably." The pink-hooded head shrugged, still holding the gun. She whispered, "To be honest, I think their mouths are as broken as yours." Spiderhead made a cry as if he was injured. "Ahem, gentlemen, stop for a moment. I know you are very excited, but please stop for a moment." He coughed twice, took 2 steps closer, and motioned them to calm down. At this moment, a sense of crisis surged from the depths of his heart. Without time to react, he gave everything to his body and let it take him up. Bang! A dark battle armor fell to the spot, smashing 2 deep pits on the roof. He stood up and pointed his hands at the Spiderhead and the pink-hooded head respectively. Rhodes' voice, which was particularly cold after the face armor, rang out in the night. "Raise your hands and surrender now. No one will get hurt." "Hey, buddy, where did you come from again?" The frightened Spiderhead fell on the other side after a roll. He squatted on the ground and asked, "I say again, raise your hands and surrender now, and no one will get hurt." The miniature energy cannon in Rhodes' palm had already lit up a dangerous blue light. "I disagree." Another voice interrupted their conversation. Immediately afterwards, a huge force knocked Rhodes out. Even with the armor protection, he felt dizzy. He flew out and fell in front of Hawkeye. He reached out and pulled Rhodes up, then looked at the attacker, and his doubts grew. The attacker was wearing a dark windbreaker and an old-fashioned detective hat. He looked like a character from a black and white tough detective movie. "It looks like we have the advantage in numbers now, man," Spiderhead teased. "Really?" Hawkeye smiled softly. Behind him, 2 men jumped up. One was wearing a dark streamlined armor, and the big red cross on the visor looked particularly attractive. The other had long hair and a beard, and looked like a tramp. He stood with his hands in his pockets and was very relaxed. Sam pointed at the 2 of them and said, "Who has more people now?" "Enough." Another cold voice interrupted their conversation. A red and black Spiderhead emerged from the darkness of the water tower above his head. Behind him were 6 black metal legs that glowed with cold light, hanging him firmly on the water tower. The man said in a condescending tone, "Don't waste time talking to them, just deal with them. Let's go find the Peter Parker of this universe." "Who are you?" Rhodes asked. He said sarcastically, "So are we starting to play some kind of number competition game now? Whoever has more people wins? Also, why do you all look the same? Even your voices are the same. Clones?" "Shut up," the red and black spiderweb head said coldly. He pointed at each of them and began to name them one by one. "War Machine, James Rhodes, Hawkeye, Clint Barton, Falcon, Sam Wilson, Winter Soldier, James Bucky Buchanan, and you, Strange. Who are you?" He narrowed his eyes, and the goggles on his mask became smaller as he moved. He pointed at the silent Steve and said, "Who are you?" Steve took a step forward, and his processed cold voice sounded on the strange rooftop. "It seems that you don't know everything. Do you want to know my identity? You have to come and get it yourself." He took a step forward, and the whole person jumped up with explosive force, and in an instant he approached the metal leg on the water tower. He swung his right fist and hit the metal leg that had no time to react to the ground. Starting with him, the war was about to break out. Rhodes found the guy covered in black. He took into account the residents around him and did not choose to use high-powered pulse weapons. Instead, he chose to use the output of the armor itself to fight him in hand-to-hand combat. One of them was good at agility and the other was good at strength. The hum of the armor and the sound of the coat made by the black shadow when dodging were intertwined. Sam's goal was clear. He was looking for the pink-hooded head who took his pistol. One of them was swinging on spider silk and the other could fly, and soon the sky became the main battlefield. Hawkeye was more direct. He ran towards Spider-Head with the bow and arrow in his hand. The guy was startled and quickly retreated, saying things like "I don't want to hurt you," which made Hawkeye even angrier. He really hated guys who chattered during the battle. Only Bucky stood there silently with his hands in his pockets, as if all these things had nothing to do with him. A girl who appeared out of nowhere squatted beside him, chewing bubble gum in her mouth, and said boringly, "Adults are really boring. What do you think?" Bucky glanced at her, hesitated for a while, and squatted down. He opened his mouth, but he didn't know how to start, so he could only say awkwardly, why are you here?" "They brought me here." The girl looked no more than middle school age, and she said indifferently, something about saving the world. "Well, although what they said was very convincing, I really don't like that guy." She pointed at the metal leg and made a face at him. "He always talks to us in a commanding tone. I hate him." Bucky listened silently, and he stretched out his right hand. "James Buchanan. My friends call me Bucky." "Hello, Bucky. My name is Penny Parker." The girl narrowed her eyes and smiled, and shook hands with him. The two of them seemed to be at peace with the world, watching the group of people fighting on the rooftop. Chapter 121 Morlun. "You just said, they brought you here?" "Yeah, they talked about a lot of theories about parallel universes. To be honest, if they didn't have evidence, I wouldn't believe them." Penny blew a bubble and popped it with her tongue. She said in a bored tone. Bucky asked again, "Why did they ask you to come?" "I don't understand why they said I was part of saving the world. However, we did see a disgusting guy everywhere when we traveled through time and space a few times before." Killing people?" "No, he was eating people." Penny stretched out her hand. She had a pink children's watch on her right hand. After she pressed it, a light curtain suddenly lit up. A man with long black hair and a very gothic look was on it, with a weird smile on his face. "Eat people? He's terrible. The first few time and space we went to were eaten up by him. People died," the girl said, hugging her legs. She looked a little confused. Bucky lowered his head. He didn't know what to say. The social skills that a normal person should have disappeared in him, or rather, have been taken away. Those damn hydras took away everything. Conscience and self-awareness alternately fell asleep in their brainwashing, and each brief awakening made him hate what he had done even more. However, he could not commit suicide, and he could not even control his own life. Thinking back to the past, his eyes darkened for a moment. Just as he was about to say something, he saw a green light from the corner of his eye. He immediately jumped up, hugged the girl, and rushed to the side. The green light became larger and larger until it tore the surrounding space apart. Bucky felt a stinging pain in his eyes and quickly looked away. When he looked back, a flashing green vortex portal had already stood in place. The man with long black hair walked out of it. The smile on his face grew bigger and bigger with his steps, even to a degree that made Bucky shudder. He opened his mouth, and the sharp teeth inside were clearly visible. The man said in a disgusting tone, "Ah, so many delicious prey. Which one should I eat first?" He glanced and saw Penny Parker, who was held in Bucky's arms. His eyes turned red in an instant. "I haven't eaten such a small spider totem," he said loudly. His voice was almost roaring. In Bucky's sight, he disappeared after saying that. He felt a tingling sensation in his scalp, which was a sign of danger. He quickly raised his left hand, and a huge force hit him. Bucky groaned and flew out directly, without any ability to fight back. Malun, the metal leg that was still fighting with Steve just now, immediately roared. He gave up Steve and rushed towards Morun, but was knocked far away by a punch he swung casually. He flew several blocks away. "Although I don't know what's going on, you'd better put that little girl down." Rode no longer entangled with the guy in black. He could see the weirdness of the matter and knew what was important and urgent. The energy cannons on the back of his hands and wrists had already been extended, emitting dangerous blue light. "Don't talk to me, you lowly creature. You're not even a totem." Disgusting. He didn't even look at Rode, but his casual words made his face under the visor turn blue with anger. "WTF, even the cannibals from another world are now racist?" "No, he just thinks you are disgusting." The shadow stood beside him and explained. His voice was low and magnetic, the kind of voice that you would know as soon as you heard it. "Oh, this guy is a tough guy. Disgusting? Yes, he prefers to eat people like us, he said self-deprecatingly, and took out a revolver from his waist. Seeing this, Rhodes said, "You don't think this thing can hurt him, do you? We have to try." He raised the gun. Steve rolled over and landed on the ground. His cold mechanical voice carried an undisguised threat. "Put her down. What if I say no?" The man called Morlun touched the fangs that popped out of his mouth and said with a smile. Not only did he not let go, but he squeezed tighter. "You can try." "Ah!" Morlun laughed shrilly, and he threw the girl in his hand, stepped on her right leg and broke it, and instantly came to Steve amid her screams of pain. Before he could react, he punched him to the ground, and the huge force even broke his armor. Then he stretched out his pale right hand and lifted him up, and an indescribable feeling instantly spread throughout Steve's body. He felt weak and painful. He could feel that his life was slowly slipping away, and this was not an illusion. Steve tried his best to look up and found that a green light was flowing along his body towards Morlun's open mouth. "You're no better than ordinary people." "Disgusting. Mediocre people are not even worthy of being my food." He threw Steve to the ground, turned back to look at the red and blue spider head, grinned and said, "You're the most delicious one among them." "I can't help it." "Peter Parker." The spider-head called Peter Parker stood up straight, and his voice came very clearly from under the mask. "Dude, don't call me by that name. You make me feel very disgusted, and I don't like people who hate me calling me by my name. I don't care whether you hate or like me, I just want to eat you." Morlun twitched his nose. He was like an impatient hound, with his mouth wide open, showing his fangs. Where did this guy come from? Hawkeye held the bow in his hand. Not only the spider-head, but even he, the bystander, felt a wave of disgust. This bastard called Morlun could use such a heavy hand on a girl, and even eat people. In his many years of career as an agent and as a member of the Avengers, he had never seen such a perverted person. "You stumped me," the spider-headed man called Peter Parker responded. His muscles tensed, and he did not dare to take Morlun lightly. "Hey, what's going on?" Sam's voice came from the sky. He was floating in the sky with the pink-hooded man in his arms, and asked. Morlun turned his head, and Hawkeye immediately shouted, "Get out of there, Sam!" "What?" Before Sam could react, Morlun was in front of him. His strength and explosiveness were exaggerated. Even Sam and Steve, who were assisted by armor, could not react. Seeing that he was about to swing his arm to hit Sam, Rhodes fired the pulse ammunition. The light blue beam reached Morlun's back in an instant, but it hit him like a drop in the ocean, and there was no reaction. "No one told you," Morlun said. He dodged again and came in front of Rhodes, with 5 sharp fingers on his raised right hand, and roared, "Is it very rude to disturb others when they are eating? You lowly mortal!" Dang! The sound of metal clashing was heard, and Bucky rushed in front of Rhodes at some point, stretched out his special left arm, and blocked Morlun's right hand. Chapter 122 Zythorn, Eating Melons. Bucky's left hand was trembling slightly, but Morlun kicked him out with a nonchalant kick. The shadow pulled the trigger of the revolver in his hand, and the ordinary bullet hit his skin without any reaction. Even if he was a good shot, it would still be the same if he hit the head. Morlun grinned and smiled at him. "I will remember you. I will eat you second." "It's really an honor." The shadow continued to pull the trigger, and after 5 shots, there was no effect. Morlun didn't care. He punched Rhodes. He wanted to kill this mortal who stained his clothes on the spot, but a flying explosive arrow made his movement pause for a moment. But just this moment gave Peter Parker a chance to save people. The spider silk in his hand stuck to Rhodes' back and dragged him back. Inside the armor, Rhodes was panting. It wasn't that he didn't want to move just now, but he couldn't move at all when facing that guy. A sense of fear welling up from deep inside made him freeze. He could only watch the guy's fist getting closer and closer to him. If it weren't for Hawkeye's arrow and Spider-Head's timely attack, he might have died right there. This was not an exaggeration. Rhodes really thought so in his heart. If he had been hit by that punch, he would have died. In the smoke and dust, Morlun's scarlet eyes were particularly dazzling. "Now, you really pissed me off," he said sullenly. As soon as he finished speaking, he repeated his old trick and appeared in front of Hawkeye again in an instant. Clint only had time to hold up the bow in his hand to block it, and then he was blown away, falling to the ground like a kite with a broken string. He fell freely in the air, and there was no part of his body that didn't hurt. The man's strength was so great that he felt that if he hadn't blocked it, he might have died immediately, but he couldn't do anything at the moment, and could only watch himself getting closer and closer to the ground. Clint closed his eyes. He thought of Natasha and his family in the shelter, and a smile appeared on his lips. At least you are all fine. With this thought, he planned to die happily, but the god of death obviously didn't want to take him today. His body floated up by itself. Clint opened his eyes in astonishment and saw the black-robed wizard standing in front of him, with a red light in his eyes. On the rooftop, Morlun succeeded in one strike, and when he wanted to continue to attack others, he suddenly froze. He stood there, and sweat began to flow on his face. Those tiny blood vessels burst a little bit, and blood gushed out, making him look like a demon. Then, he suddenly began to tremble. His eyeballs burst, and blood splashed out. Then he fell to his knees with a plop, and even buried his head deeply. What was inconsistent with his behavior was that he was roaring wildly at this time, as if he wanted to resist the behavior of his body. But he couldn't do anything, and could only watch his head hit the ground. Then, a foot stepped on it. A voice laughed contemptuously in his ear. Morlun's face flushed, and he struggled with all his might. The sound was heard far away in the night. Even if he used all his strength, he still couldn't move his body. He just knelt there, prostrating himself in a standard way. After a moment, the owner of the voice chuckled and stepped on his head with one foot. People who claim to be noble, don't seem to be that noble, he said sarcastically. I can guess without you saying it. You must be very unconvinced now, right? It just so happens that I am also a little angry. How about we fight again? As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding scenery suddenly changed. The fragrance of the totems disappeared in Morlun's perception. He was still on the roof of the city at night, but there was no living person around him, except for the mage. Morlun stood up. He looked at the mage whose eyes were also red. He wanted to say something harsh to get back at him, but the mage was not interested at all. Just a reminder, the second chance will start when you stand up, Shenyan said calmly. He stood there and made a gesture. The huge magic power in his body surged out, and in an instant, Morlun was crushed into a pool of bloody fragments. And this was just the beginning. Shenyan moved his fingers slightly, and a white light flashed. Morlun, who was at a loss, stood there again. He recalled what had just happened, and suddenly his eyes widened. Pain instantly spread all over his body, and his second death came again. The mud that came from nowhere completely wrapped him up. Although he no longer needed to breathe, he still felt the pain of suffocation. He died again 3 minutes later, suffocated to death. The white light flashed again. Morlun stood there again. This time, even his clothes were brand new. The difference was that he was pale and screamed repeatedly after he was resurrected. Stop, please stop. He didn't finish his words. The wizard calmly burned him alive with the flames from hell again, and then resurrected again. White light flashed continuously, and his way of dying was constantly changing. Between the repeated death and resurrection, Morlun's mind gradually faded. He would beg for mercy at first, but later, he just made meaningless calls, dull and unresponsive, and even had little reaction to pain. Sometimes, being a madman is a kind of happiness. But the wizard did not want him to have this kind of happiness. He moved his fingers, and Morlun regained consciousness again. The torture will last for a long time until the wizard is tired of it. In the dimension of Zysorn, the god of the underworld sat on his throne, looking at the picture sent back by the dark book, smiling comfortably. It seems that my old friend really has trick up his sleeve. No, maybe it's a lot of tricks. If she really sealed the door to the parallel universe, Morlun and these cute spiders would not come here at all. What exactly does she want to do? It's really interesting. He tapped his cheek with his slender fingers, full of expectations for what might happen in the future. No matter good or bad, the 5th update is over. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123. Peter Parker does not exist. The time in the mirror space is completely different from the real world. When Shenyan brought Morlun, who had become a complete idiot and even soul repair spells did not work on him, back to the real world, only 2 minutes had passed in the perception of Rhodes and others. Rhodes was a little curious about what the mage had done to this bastard, but he did not ask. Last time, he was also curious and wanted to see how Shenyan dealt with the cultists. As a result, the ordinary interrogation had only lasted for 10 minutes, and he ran out of the interrogation room with a pale face. After that, he ate vegetarian food for a whole month. He almost became a vegetarian. Of course, Tony took him to a newly opened hamburger restaurant later, and his poor vegetarian stomach became a meat lover again. The mage glanced at everyone, and he snapped his fingers, and the surrounding scenery changed rapidly. The space was like jelly, kneading it at will according to his will. In just a few seconds, they came to the Holy of Holies. It was still as chaotic as a garbage dump, but no one cared about it at this time. Shenyan's mind moved, and 5 chairs appeared on the spot. Metal legs, red and blue spider head, pink hood head, black shadow, and the little girl who called herself Penny Parker all sat on the chairs in an instant. The wizard also carefully healed her broken right leg. Steve, Rod, Hawkeye, Sam, and Bucky stood behind the wizard. Hawkeye keenly noticed that the red and blue spider head, who had been nagging endlessly, was sitting quietly on the chair prepared by the wizard for them, and he didn't even dare to breathe. Ignoring the group of Spider-Men, he turned around and greeted his friends whom he hadn't seen for many years. Only at this time, he would show a relaxed smile on his face, although the red that could not be concealed in his eyes looked particularly terrifying. As for Morlun, he was thrown into the corner like a puddle of mud, and no one cared about him, just like a plastic bag in a garbage dump. Your eyes. Rhodes's visor popped open, and he pointed at his eyes with a strange look on his face, and said to Shenyan, "It's just a small problem." The wizard smiled at him and didn't explain too much, just treat it as some kind of harmless sequelae. "Where have you been these years, man? It's really hard to see your wizard." "Not only you, but also Strange," Sam complained. "I went to other worlds to play around. It's normal that you can't see me." As for Strange, forgive him. The poor guy hasn't had a good sleep for 2 years. The wizard answered him with a smile, patted his wings, and threw a small permanent strengthening spell on it. Other worlds. Steve took off his helmet. He combed his sweat-soaked hair on his forehead, and asked, "Yeah, Steve, I've always wanted to go home." "Well, you can think of this as a trip, but the journey is a little longer." "That's not ordinary long, damn it. You must tell us what other worlds are like, and, you dealt with the Kree warship in the sky before, right?" Hawkeye seemed very talkative in front of his friends. The wizard responded to his old friends one by one, only Bucky didn't say much. He just covered his right hand, and cast a thankful look when the wizard's eyes swept over him. After reminiscing about the past, he snapped his fingers and let them go back to rest. What happened next had nothing to do with them, and it would only add to their troubles. He turned around and asked, "Okay, who among you, or which ones, is Peter Parker?" Metal Legs, Spiderhead, and Shadow raised their hands. Shenyan pointed at Metal Legs and motioned him to put his hand down. "You are not Peter Parker. At least your soul is not ... Very interesting technology." His indifferent comment made the other people look at Metal Legs strangely, and his back was soaked with cold sweat. The spider sense inherited from Peter Parker made him dare not even breathe loudly at this time. The man in the black robe was like a sun in the spider sense, emitting a strong sense of his presence all the time. He even had the illusion that just looking at him would burn him to death. "Do you have ... What do you want, sir?" Spiderhead swallowed his saliva and asked. "I just want to confirm whether you are Peter Parker, that's all." The wizard answered him lightly, raised his chin and nodded at Morlun, who was thrown in the corner. He continued, "I read his memories. He comes from a family called the Inheritors, wandering in endless parallel universes and feeding on people like you. That is, Spider-Man. And in his memories, I found that the Spider-Man in most worlds is usually named Peter Parker. He is also the one they eat the most. The wizard's calm narration made Spider-Head shudder, but the Black Shadow seemed to be a little unconcerned. He took off his black mask, revealing a handsome and angular face. Although we are all called Peter Parker, at least we don't all look the same, right? Of course, number. But this is not my point. You broke into my world without permission and brought such a dangerous enemy. If it weren't for me, the consequences would be very serious. Do you agree with this? All five nodded. Very good. Then, since we have reached a consensus, we can proceed to the next step of the conversation. The wizard smiled and stretched out his right hand. A bright blue flame suddenly lit up between his slender 5 fingers. He blew gently at the flame, and it began to dance wildly, growing larger and even touching the ceiling of the sanctuary. But even so vigorous, it still did not make people feel the temperature. After a moment, the flame slowly went out. The confused Spider-Head could not help but ask, sir, your performance. Hey, it's a performance, right? Forget it. Forget it. I mean, what does it mean? Shenyan didn't care about his little rudeness. In most cases, he was easy to talk to. The wizard even explained to him, it's just a little trick to search for people in this world. I searched for the name Peter Parker. No results. This person does not exist in our world, and even people with the same name and surname as him do not exist. As the wizard spoke, the red light in his eyes flickered. Chapter 124. Dr. Otto, is he non-existent or something made him non-existent? Metal Legs quickly thought of the key point and said so. The wizard nodded without comment. Yes. As far as I know, there are more than 20 kinds of magic that can modify other people's cognition and memory. Combined with his current situation, there are only 3 kinds of magic that can make people all over the world forget the existence of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And these 3 are not my boasting. None of them can work on me. Unless, the wizard narrowed his eyes. He had realized something. Unless what? Asked the pink-hooded head who had not spoken since coming here. No. Nothing. Shenyan shook his head. He did not say what he guessed in his heart, but his expression looked a little gloomy. His silence made the atmosphere at the scene a little awkward, except for Penny Parker, who didn't care about these things. The 5 people present all had spider sense. This special ability is very troublesome to explain clearly. Simply put, it can predict danger. Although the wizard had no intention of taking action against them, he was so powerful that even a simple expression could make their spider sense frantically worn in their brains. Spider-Head raised his hand, like a student in class preparing to answer the teacher's question, raising his arm high. This playful gesture also made the atmosphere more relaxed. He said quickly, so, do you want to try the name May Parker? Hearing this name, the expression on Black Shadow's face became a little sad. The fleeting expression of emotion did not escape the eyes of the silent pink-hooded head, who patted Black Shadow in comfort. Spider-Head scratched the back of his head and said awkwardly, well, in my world, I have an aunt named May Parker. The wizard spread his hands and said, a name alone is not enough, Mr. Parker. How many people with the same name as May Parker do you think there are in the world? If all those thousands of May Parkers were revealed, would you still have to distinguish them one by one? Then I have a photo here. You can find it based on the photo. Spider-Head took off his mask, revealing his young face. He looked not much different from the Black Shadow, and the two looked so similar that they even looked like a father and son. He reached into a layer at the back of the mask and took out a photo. It was a group photo, in which he, a sturdy old man and a white-haired old woman were smiling. Young Peter Parker was a little embarrassed, and he whispered, this is my uncle, and the one next to him is Aunt May. At that time, they were all still there. Why do you carry the photo with you? Metal Legs asked. Because I have no place to live, and my things have been taken away. I can't carry the photo frame around to fight crime, so I can only carry this photo with me. At least this way I won't lose it. Anyway, I wear a mask when I sleep. He smiled awkwardly after he finished speaking, as if he felt that his experience was ridiculous. Shenyan took the photo solemnly. He glanced at the white-haired old woman, and then returned the photo to Peter Parker. Is this okay? I mean, you don't need to burn it. I saw that magicians in the movies all do this. His voice became lower and lower, as if he realized how outrageous what he said was. Unexpectedly, Shenyan didn't say anything else. He even smiled and patiently explained, "No, maybe it was necessary to do that thousands of years ago, but we have improved magic a lot a long time ago, not to mention that it is me who casts the spell." He stretched out his right hand, and the blue flame lit up again, covering his face and making his voice seem a little distant. "And, I don't want to destroy other people's precious things." He blew gently, and the result was no different from the last time. Spider-Head put on his mask again and sighed in disappointment. Oh, Metal Legs had been watching all this silently beside him. His eyepiece had already turned on the recording function, recording everything the wizard did after he came here. To him, a person who could easily turn Morlun into an idiot might be more dangerous than Morlun himself, not to mention that he seemed to know how he got this body. The wizard glanced at him, noticed something but did not say anything, just moved the fingers of his right hand. He changed the subject. "Let's talk about parallel universes. What are your worlds like?" Shadow said, "My world is not like yours." He tried to find a suitable word from his vocabulary, and after a while of meditation, he finally thought of it. "Advanced cars are still rare, usually only those rich people can afford them. The city I live in is also called New York, but it's dark." At this point, he was silent for a while. "I don't see hope. It's not like your world, with so many strange people." He closed his mouth after saying this. Spider-Head looked around and said, "My turn? Okay. My world is not like yours, with so many superheroes. As far as I know, I seem to be the only one. Most of the other people with superpowers use their powers to do evil, although I know that some of them do not do it out of their own will." The pink-hooded head took off his mask. She had shattered blonde hair, a pretty face, and even earrings. She looked very young and said perfunctorily, "My world is nothing special. It's just a very ordinary world." Penny Parker chewed gum. She looked absent-minded. Her eyes kept wandering around the sanctuary. She seemed to be very interested in those old instruments and did not speak. Only Metal Legs was left, and the wizard's eyes moved to him. Metal Legs took a deep breath and took off his mask. He looked younger than the Shadow, but more mature than Spider-Head. "My world is similar to yours, wizard. I know almost all the people standing behind you just now. I just didn't expect that Captain America in your world would choose not to wear his uniform." "The Avengers?" "Yes." The wizard pondered for a while. He made a gesture and asked, "I almost understand, but I have a question for you, Dr. Otto Gunther Octavius. Why is your soul in Peter Parker's body?" As soon as he said this, Metal Legs' face changed immediately. Friends who have read the comics should understand why Dr. Otto, also known as Dr. Octopus, is in Spider-Man's body, but I won't follow the comics completely. There are too many digressions. Anyway, thank you all for your votes and support. There will be 5 more chapters tomorrow. Chapter 125, a soap opera-like plot. The defense system designed by Metal Legs had already started to work silently. The 6 drooping Metal Legs had already prepared the neurotoxins that were specially designed to deal with humans. He ignored the crazy warning of the spider sense in his mind and said with all his strength, "You recognize the wrong person." The wizard smiled. "Really? All right." He snapped his fingers, without even touching his body. Metal Legs found that his perspective had changed in an instant. The feeling of wearing a mask disappeared, and he could no longer feel the weight of the 6 Metal Legs behind him. He looked down at his hands, and when he saw the familiar belly, he realized something. The spider-head sitting on the chair jumped up. He pointed at the blue spirit standing next to Metal Legs and said in disbelief, "Dr. Otto, it's really you?" The appearance of this spirit looked very unattractive, even ugly. He had an ugly hairstyle that looked like a potlet and a mushroom head, and wore a pair of glasses that completely covered his eyes. He was fat and short. Even at this point, he still wanted to resist, or to say something stubbornly. "No, you don't understand. I am Spider-Man." Shenyan just said softly, "I read your memory." This sentence made him quiet down all of a sudden, and his soul stood there, like a silent blue giant doll. After a while, he laughed. The laughter echoed in the sanctuary. Shenyan asked, What are you laughing at? No, nothing. You won't understand. I just thought of a funny joke. Otto's ugly face was raised with a smile. After being expelled from Peter Parker's body, he lost his spider sensibility and seemed very calm at this time. His body was no longer trembling slightly like before. He just said lightly, "If you want to do it, please do it. I won't resist, and I guess my resistance is nothing to you." The wizard interrupted him. "I never said what I was going to do to you, Dr. Otto, and, in fact, you did a good job in his body." "What?" Otto was stunned. He seemed unable to understand what the man was saying. In his expectation, he should be killed directly by this wizard after being exposed, but the words he said seemed so sincere. His brain was confused, and he didn't quite understand what the wizard wanted to do, until Shenyan snapped his fingers again. Another soul appeared, standing there with his head down, as if he had fallen into a deep sleep. It was a person Otto was very familiar with, his enemy, the original owner of the body he took away, someone he admired deep in his heart. That was Peter Parker. He stood there, without a mask, wearing his own red and blue spider suit, not the red and black that Otto had improved. "How did you do it?" "I remember clearly." Otto couldn't understand what was happening now. He had some knowledge of magic before, but it was just means of resurrecting the dead or summoning fire and lightning. He had never come into contact with such advanced magic involving the soul. Moreover, in his memory, he should have transferred Peter Parker's soul to his original body, and let him die as himself, as Dr. Octopus. The wizard smiled mysteriously. "Technology cannot affect the human soul, Dr. Otto. I admire you for using your technology to transfer his consciousness to your body, but his soul is still sleeping in his body." While they were talking, Peter Parker woke up slowly. He looked at the scene in front of him and was a little confused. The wizard waved his hand and sent him back to his body. After reading the memory, he said with a complicated expression. After a moment, "Otto, don't call me that." Otto did not appreciate it. He replied coldly, "Kill me or chop me up as you please, Parker. Losers have no say. But I hope you at least don't erase all my achievements. The 6 metal legs behind you are a masterpiece." "Actually," Parker scratched his face. He took off the high-tech mask that was a little uncomfortable, and said, "I don't mean to kill you." "Are you sick of something?" Otto could no longer bear this atmosphere as if they were pitying him. He began to roar. Otto Gunther Octavius, your enemy, the supervillain, Dr. Octopus is standing here. I took away your life, your body, and even almost killed you. No, I have succeeded. If it weren't for this wizard who suddenly appeared." He took a breath, but he didn't realize that he was already a soul body and didn't need to do such things. He continued, "You hypocritical bastard, Parker. You could have just killed me, instead of humiliating me. Do you think I would be happy with such an image? Come on, do it." The thief who stole your body is standing right in front of you. His roar was heard by the pink-hooded head, the Shadow and Penny Parker who were watching the show. Penny Parker whispered, "Why do I feel like I'm watching an 8 o'clock soap opera?" "Yes, and it's weird, because one of the people has the same face as me." The Spider-Head also answered her in a low voice. "Soap opera? What is that?" the Shadow asked. "Ah, old man, you can understand it as forget it. I don't know how to explain it to you. Besides, my name is Gwen." She smiled and stretched out her hand to shake hands with the Shadow. Peter Parker." The Shadow stretched out his hand and shook her hand a little uncomfortably. He looked a little embarrassed for no reason. "No, Otto, calm down." Peter Parker stretched out his hand and motioned Otto to calm down. Shenyan looked at this with interest. He was curious about how this Peter Parker would solve this matter. "Listen, I never thought of killing anyone. You can say that I'm a hypocritical person, or you can say that I'm a fool, but I will never kill anyone, not even you. Otto, this is my principle. I've actually been sleeping in my body, and I can see everything you do. I have to say that you may be a better Spider-Man than me. You balance the problem between my secret identity and my real identity at once, and even opened a company. Of course, I still think that your behavior of alienating Aunt May and Mary Jane is very asshole, but considering that you are not me, we can skip this point. The following is still being coded. I suggest you take a nap and then watch it. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.